And welcome back to A.R.'s Tales, aka the A.R.T podcast. I am A.R. Mirabal, and today I am joined by a very special guest, a returning heavyweight, Steve R. Gans. Truly. Oh, and that is not a dig. That is not a dig. Don't start emailing me. I'm not fat shaming. None of that. I am just truly. I mean, we were just chatting up prior to the podcast hitting record. I am over the moon to speak to this person again. Author of Fallen, newly released, and Israfel's Rising, the first book of the. Did we speak? It was going to be a trilogy. I think we did.
There are, I have a story for a third book, but I have no immediate plans to write it. We can get into why if you want to.
Oh, and we will in just a minute. But before we do, Steve R. Gans, how you doing?
I'm good, thank you. It's good to talk to you again. It feels like it's just yesterday we talked.
Oh, I'm telling you, time is moving. I say it all the time. The older I've gotten, my perception of time has just gotten way out of hand. Do you remember how 3 hours felt when you were like 14?
Yeah, it was a lot longer.
Forever.
And I don't know if it's just a question of the longer you live, the more the years seem to be smaller to you because you've got so many of them. It's like if you've got $1 and somebody gives you another dollar, it's a big deal. But if you've got $100 and somebody gives you another dollar, it's not such a big deal. Maybe time works the same way. I don't know. But this only gets worse the older you get. The time just keeps accelerating. That's just the way it is.
Now that's a really good analogy because I was just about to follow up with I read a long time ago just like a neurological study or something about how the reason that time goes faster is that exact thing, that as time kind of multiplies, like the reason why babies are so fascinated by everything is because they're perceiving everything for the first time. The first time that you hand them something, the first time that people are in front of them doing some crazy stuff. That's why peekaboo is such an attractive thing to a baby, because it's like, oh my god, what is going on? They just disappeared and reappeared.
Yeah.
It's like abnormal. But then as you progress and like more things, you experience more things, your mind just starts kind of like auto tuning things out. Like when you shave for the first time, it's like a huge deal. But then like you shave the second time, your brain just goes like, all right, we get this, and just kind of like fast forwards it perceptional wise.
Yeah, you absorb it and take it in, and it becomes second nature, and you don't even think about it. And that works that way with everything, and it's good and bad. It is what it is.
Without a single doubt. Without a single doubt. Oh, and before we go any further, where can people find you for the people listening? Social media, Instagram, website.
Okay. I'm on Facebook, just as Steve Gans. I tried to create a separate author page because I've been on Facebook for like 12 years. Just didn't really take off. So I'm just doing all of my author and personal stuff under Steve Gans on Facebook. I'm also on Instagram. And of course, there's my website, stevergans.com, that we're looking to revamp here shortly. As soon as I get my webmaster free, she's really busy, but we want to do a major overhaul of the website. But that's where you can find me.
Well, and you need to find, and of course the Amazon is where you can find most of the book. It's also on Goodreads, Kindle. I'm telling you, Israfel's Rising is beyond worth it. It's beyond worth your time. And I actually did want to, please go ahead.
No, just gonna say I'm very lucky. I just got my 8th Amazon review, and it's another 5-star. So I'm waiting for the shoe to drop. That 4-star or 1-star review is coming sooner or later. It's going to happen, and I'm wanting to get it over with at this point. It's like pulling a sliver. It's like just get it over with, get it out of me. But so far, 8 in a row, 5-star. I'm very gratified, and it's people are liking it, so I'm happy with that.
Well, I don't like to. I didn't want to get into this. I mean, like, I don't normally bring up any, and I'm not going to say any names, but there is an author that has a relatively good social media following who released a book a couple months ago, and it got down to like a lot of backlash towards it. We'll just leave it there. It got down to like I believe a 3-star, and over the 3-star average, and over the weekend a whole bunch of 5-star anonymous reviews flooded her accounts. Their accounts, could have been a her, could have been a him, could have been a dog. I'm not naming anybody.
Yeah.
But
Who knows?
and people on Reddit and a couple other like forums that immediately noticed, and it's just one of those things that, you know, reviews are just such a weird thing. And I didn't honestly, with all the things that I knew about the internet, I didn't even know that was possible. I thought maybe, you know, get a few friends, be like, hey, drop me a nice little thing, not the amount that means. Supposedly it's shifted the score to the point that I think it's approaching 4-star now.
Wow. Yeah, that happens. And, you know, who's to say it's legit or not? It looks
Mm,
suspicious, the timing of it. But who knows? It's Amazon's
very.
really good for all their impersonal, gigantic conglomerate machinery that can be hard to navigate. They're really good about keeping an eye on that stuff.
Hmm.
And, you know, if you're review trading or review swapping or whatever it is, they don't like that, and they will shut you down no matter how much money you're making them, because they don't need your money.
Hmm.
So I hope it's all legit for that author's sake. And but yeah, I mean, you can't hit it out of the park every time. You know, if you're a baseball player, if you get your job right 30% of the time, you're a great baseball player. You know, if you got a 300 average, you're fantastic. But that really means you're missing 7 out of 10 times. You can't write a great song every time. You can't write a great book every time. So I feel their pain. I have a terrible dread of you know, I know it's going to come someday. I'm going to write that book that nobody likes. Like, oh, he let us down with this one. It's got to happen. But you just do the best you can. They can't all be winners. So that just makes your next better book look so much better by comparison. You know.
Yeah, without a doubt, honestly.
So
Again, just great, a great perspective. Uh, well, without, you know, delving too much into that, let's talk about Israfel's Rising. Well, the whole Israfel's, you know, trilogy.
you mean this book available at Amazon? Never mind.
No, yeah, no, please
Shameless.
go ahead, go ahead. All that. Give it a nice little catwalk through the
No,
back.
I stuck one up there, you know, back behind me. Product placement, you know, I understand this is a thing, but no, yeah, since we talked last time, it had just come out, I think,
Yes,
last
it
time.
did.
And it's been out for a while now. The people who've read it, um, the feedback's been pretty positive.
As it
I've had
should be.
yeah, a few comments of people offering helpful criticism that and things that they would like differently and
Ooh.
all that, which has been great. Um, and I immediately, once that got out, started to work on the sequel because I wanted to complete it and get it out there for people who wanted to see what happens next. And that's out now in ebook form. We're still working. Spend an hour talking about that. Working on getting the print version out because we've been trying to format it for 3 weeks now for Amazon, and it hasn't worked yet. But I'm going to tackle it again today and hopefully sort that out so we can get the print versions out. It seems like so far my readership prefers the print version, and I'm the same way. I'm an old-fashioned guy. I like the print books. So hopefully get that out and going. So far, everyone who has read the sequel, Israfel Fallen, says it's a better book. So maybe they're lying to me, but I think it is because I think it's a tighter book and it's the book I wanted to write. I don't remember if we talked about this last time.
We did.
Yeah,
That
I
this
started
book
out
is more
intending
of
to
a
write.
cat and mouse.
Yeah,
Well,
Israfel
Rising.
Rising is a cat and mouse game. You learn pretty early on who the bad guy is, and the cops figure it out too. And they're like, will they catch him or not? Pretty simple. The second one is a murder mystery. Who did it and why? And you have to hide the killer in plain sight and then reveal them at just the right time and hope it all makes sense to the reader and they buy it and that they didn't figure out who it was on page 10. So bigger challenge, but that's the book I wanted to write. When I started this journey, I intended to write Israfel Fallen. And all of this was just going to be backstory. It was going to be an info dump at the beginning of Israfel Fallen, about 5 pages of, okay, you need to know all this. Now I can start. And I realized, no, there's another book's worth of stuff here. To be fair to the reader, this is 2 books. So I wrote the first one. I started writing my first book not wanting to write it at all. I don't know how common that is. But I knew I had to, so did that. And along the way, became grateful that I had to, because it gave me time to flesh out and develop characters more, and to show a progression from the first book, the second book, which is like 3 years later, and make the journey, and also kind of make my bones as a writer, and so I could do the mystery because it's harder. So I'm grateful now that I had to write Israfel Rising, but at the time I was like, I want to write this book. I want to write the next one. That was my intention. And of course, while I was plotting out those two, a little voice popped into my head and said, you know, there's a third book here if you really want it. If this does well, there's another story you could tell. Okay, fine. And I'm probably write that one in the next couple of years. But yeah, it's going well, and people like the second book. No one has guessed who the killer or killers are yet. So that's good. I was worried about that because, you know, the whole mystery turns on that moment, that big reveal. And if you blow that, the whole book is, you know, you got to redo everything. So I managed to have pulled that off somehow. I think I got lucky. And I'll probably never put myself through that again. I think I'll just stick to cat and mouse because it's easier than trying to hide a killer in plain sight. And people who read mysteries read a lot of them, and they've seen every angle and trick and plot deception and all those things. So they're way ahead of you in the game. They're hard people to surprise and get around. So I may just take my one and done with that, and take my victory and go home before I embarrass myself by blowing one. So we'll see.
So much to unpack with that. Without getting too much into the spoilers, because again, Israfel's Rising and Israfel's Rising Fallen, my bad, all on Amazon now. Pick it up. Pick it up. You need to.
Yeah.
But without getting too much into the spoilers, one thing that really caught my attention was when you were talking about the reviews and how some people, can you kind of get into the specifics of what they were commenting, what you took away from it?
Yeah, with the first one, because I haven't gotten much feedback on the second one. I've got one review, which is luckily 5 stars on the second book. But with the first one, the feedback I got both in reviews and in personal messages and things, people liked it. They liked the character development. They liked that the 4 cops who are trying to catch the bad guy have distinct personalities and interact well with each other and work well as a team, but they have definite differences of personality and opinion. And so there's some bickering and some tension there that kind of adds to everything. And I did that on purpose. I wanted to leave no stone unturned. I hate it as a reader if I'm reading a mystery or a crime novel, and either, you know, the cops and the lawyers, whoever, are talking about the case, and I'm sitting there thinking, yeah, but what about this? You haven't considered this possibility. So I thought if I have 4 very different cops, not only can the reader keep them separate in their head, but I can use their different points of view to say, hey, what about this? What about that? And argue with each other and cover all those bases for the reader, kind of play devil's advocate for each other and in the process for the reader. But people liked that. Some people thought I should have, there's a subplot where the main cop, Bob, his marriage kind of goes to hell during the course of the book. That's not really a big giveaway. It's a subplot. It's a consequence of him being absorbed in this case, and it just comes to dominate his life. And I handled that in 3 or 4 scenes between him and his wife. They go from being perfectly happy to, yeah, she's leaving you. And some people thought I gave that kind of short shrift. I should have spent more time developing that. But that again was a conscious choice. I thought, okay, first of all, it's a subplot. It doesn't really pertain to the main story other than showing that Bob's life is falling apart. And also I thought once the reader sees that it's headed that way, I know as a reader, I would think, yeah, there goes his marriage. She's going to leave him before this is all over. So I thought if most readers are going to see that, why drag it out? Why waste a lot of time having them bickering and arguing and doing all these scenes where the reader's like, yeah, flip past this. I want to find out what's happening with the killer. So I didn't want any dead spots. I had a terrible fear of boring the reader. So I thought, okay, you know, I'll hit the high points with the decline of his marriage and just leave it there, and the reader can fill in the blanks if it's important to them. Not to short the character or the relationship with his wife, but it was secondary to the main plot, which was let's catch this guy. So some people, and I understood people wanted more. Some people, the longer the book, the better. All of King's fans, all of George Martin's fans, and who am I to argue with success? How can you criticize what they're doing? My God, it's really working. But I personally will not read a book that's 1,000 pages long. I don't care if it's about me. I can't imagine writing one, and I'm definitely not going to read one. That's like a commitment. I mean, that's a marathon. My books, in my mind, are intended to be quick reads, entertainment, some escapism, a bit of a vicarious thrill, like a good thriller should be. But that's it. I'm a firm believer in walk in, tell your story, and get out. So there were people who wanted more. There were people who wanted a longer book. And also, I got a little bit of criticism on the ending. At the end of the book, a lot of major things that have been building all happen all at once. And some people thought I should have spaced them, structured it better and paced it out, had it, flow more smoothly instead of all of a sudden everything just kind of blows up in everybody's face. But that's the way life is. When things go wrong, it feels that way, that everything goes wrong at once. Even if 5 bad things happen to you in 2 months, you feel like it all happened at once. Just emotionally, that's the feeling you have. Everything's wrong. So I wanted to recreate that feeling by literally jamming everything all at once. Oh no, this happened. Oh, what about this? Oh geez, it's over. And it's just the way it goes in the show. I wanted the rhythm of kind of like a fever dream rather than a realistic depiction of what would happen at the end. So, but I mean, all that's minor, and a lot of that's just matters of taste and personal choice and style. The response has been overwhelmingly positive, which stunned and amazed me, and I'm very happy about that. But your point about reviews are so important, and I emphasize this on social media and to everybody I talk to. It's like, you guys have no idea how important reviews are. First of all, to prospective readers, if I'm looking for a book, and none of us have tons of spare money laying around these days, I'm looking for something that I'm pretty sure I'm going to like, and I don't want to have to spend a fortune on it. But I do want to choose the right thing, and if you're an unknown author who's just starting out, reviews are terribly important, because I know as a reader myself, if I'm looking at a guy who I've never heard of him, never heard of his book, but it kind of looks interesting, I'm going to read the reviews. And if the reviewers are like, hey, yeah, this was a lot of fun, or it's okay, or God, this sucked, whatever, that's going to help me make an informed decision as to where I'm going to spend my money and where I'm going to spend my time. And it's important in that way. You're helping other readers, and you're helping the author too. You're creating more visibility. If a book has 20 reviews of all kinds, and you read them, you probably have a pretty good sense of whether or not you're going to like that book. And more often than not, you're right. If the book has no reviews, well, God, it could be great, but are you really going to spend $5 or a couple of days of your time reading a book, and it might just be a giant waste of your time when you could have been reading this other book that had 20 reviews that you kind of like. So I tell people, please leave a review. Just, make it honest. I'm not asking you to say you like it, but just tell people what you honestly thought, so they can decide whether or not it's for them. And it helps author visibility. It moves us up the visible charts for social media and Amazon and everything else. So I think about, so far, maybe 1 out of 10 readers that I've had have actually left a review. So that's not great, but I understand people are busy, but I encourage everybody to do it. I go back and do reviews now on books that I read years ago, just to, they're still out there somewhere. If someone's thinking of reading it, I want to give them my opinion. So I'm going to try to get better about that myself, but they do matter. They're huge.
Very interesting points. Oh, that was kind of a weird echo. No, very interesting points. And specifically, the whole thing about the comments and the way that you structured. I mean, honestly, I was thinking so introspectively of just how it could, because I believe I'm right with you on the whole brevity aspect. I mean, I'm with you about just on 90% of. I mean, yeah, at least 90% of what you said, I'm on your track with. I do believe, we talked about it last time. Those like long, lengthy volumes. I understand the appreciation for it, and an analogy that you said with me, and I've used almost on every episode, is the whole thing that this is a buffet and you just want lobsters and burgers and steaks. You also want fries and nuggets and whatever. So like that's the justification that I understand for people. Like, all right, I get it. You want to read a dictionary size book. I get it. It's obviously going to be very lore and based. If I took the time to describe a flower, that's going to be pretty descriptive. But you want to do that. You want to read 5 pages of me going into a flower, the description. I mean, God bless you. I'm not judging. I'm not judging,
Yeah.
even though I kind of am. But I understand appreciation for it. But I think brevity is everything. And even what you were saying, the only thing that I would maybe suggest is maybe add it more nuanced. Maybe not even go into it, but maybe instead of waking up, the very first thing that the book starts off with after the prologue is that he wakes up with his wife. No.
That's in there. He comes home and wakes up his wife. She's asleep.
Yes,
And he comes home and wakes
a
her up.
tennis game. No.
Um, she's she's a nurse. She has come home from work and just collapsed in bed. And he comes home and wakes her up, and they talk about the case, and and then the scene after that, they have dinner the next time you see them, and they're very affectionate and happy with each other. And after, you don't see her again until things start to go wrong, and then there's, I think, 3 scenes of where it all just goes to hell. And yeah, and like you said, brevity with me is everything too. I like to keep my writing tight, and that's actually one of the words another person who uh, another author, Shane Lusher, who's terrific. His books, shanelusher.com. Check his stuff out. But I asked him to read well, he's read both books, but the second book for me, and his comment back to me was, this writing is really tight. And I like that. I come through, I don't go, well, what more could I say about this when I'm revising? I go like, okay, what is there anything here that's not needed to make my point? I don't want to strip any poetry or imagery out of the books, but I want them to be tight. But that's a personal choice and a stylistic choice. Those readers and writers who love a big, something the size of Dune, where you're just going to become lost in every nuance and aspect of this different world, especially for a fantasy or sci-fi. I totally get it. Or a book that's about someone's interior life, and there's no right or wrong. One is not better than the other. It's just what you personally like. And I personally like things that are really tight. Um, so that's what I wanted to do. But yeah, I can't, I remember years ago when I read The Stand, because everyone was raving. Oh, you've got to, I said, I love Carrie, love The Dead Zone, love The Shining. You got to read The Stand. Oh my God, it's just epic. I'm like, okay, Jesus, this is heavy. I can barely lift it. But okay, everyone says I got to read this. And I read it and I thought, this is a good story. I don't feel like it's a great story. And I feel like you could cut 300 pages out of this and you'd still have just as good a story. And I could have read something else. And that was 300 pages long in the time it took me to read this. And, again, it's like, well, I've sold, this many books, and Stephen King is a multi-trillionaire. I'm not saying I'm right and he's wrong. It's just a personal thing with me. I like things that are tight. I don't like films that drag on forever. There are some epic length films I like, but it's because they're just perfectly masterfully done. Most of the time, I like a shorter film. And I'm not a fan of of series, for one thing, but of the stuff where you do deep dives into creating a whole new world. I don't know that I could do that as a writer. I applaud anyone who can. But as a reader, I'm not drawn to that stuff. I haven't read any of the Game of Thrones books at all. First of all, I don't care for the genre. Anything with dragons and magic and swords, and I have a natural aversion to it.
Me too.
I don't know why. It's a failing on my part. I just can't appreciate it very much. And I understand it's about the personal relationships and the intrigue and the politics, and it's not about the dragons and the swords, but the trappings, the dressing of the story, it's just not me. But I look at the size of those books and go, oh my God, this is, I'm already married. How much more of a long-term commitment do I want to make? It's just not for me. So, kudos to the internationally renowned multimillionaire George Martin, better writer than I'll ever be. Not arguing that, but it's not for me. Lots of people love seafood. I don't. It's just me. So I've we started this about 10 minutes ago, didn't we? Yeah, I like stuff that's tight and gripping, and you kind of get like a roller coaster. Roller coaster's over in 2 minutes. But those 2 minutes, you feel like it's been hours. You feel older when you get up a roller coaster. That's kind of what I'm going for, and that's the kind of stuff that I prefer. I grew up reading a lot of pulp fiction, the crime novels, the noir stuff, and none of those were very long, because I don't think you can sustain that kind of thing for very long. I could have told this story in one 550-page book, but who wants a 550-page crime thriller? Tom Harris could probably do it, but I couldn't. So this is what I chose to do.
I mean,
So
you're singing my song. My book, Allegory of the End, volume 1 and 2, I could easily put it into one book, and even the third little thing after, I could probably fit that into one book as well. But why? Like I'm on the same exact wavelength of view. Just it's Hemingway's iceberg analogy. It's you don't want the whole island. You want just a little thing that you can perceive the entire length and width, the magnitude of it introspectively, and you sit back. I mean, I was just thinking about it a couple days ago that my favorite love scenes weren't the ones that they were like, sat across from one another and just confess their love to one another in the most magnificent, whimsical ways ever. It was always the very nuanced things, or even deaths. It wasn't the death where like the deaths that stuck with me weren't the ones that were written like as I stared into his eyes, and they shifted from the beautiful blue that I seen all the way from growing up, and we were 12 in the farmyard when we were doing XYZ and doing all this, and as they faded into the gray of the stormy as the storm rolled in, blah blah blah. That's not what stuck with me. The ones that stuck with me is that I stared into his eyes and he blinked his last blink, or like something like that, and then just the character just like sits back and goes like, yeah, that was it. And like that right there to me is a type of writing that actually makes me stop reading. It's like, oh my God.
Yeah, because you're
blinking.
part of it. Yeah, it's interactive.
Yeah.
Because you're engaging the reader in like, okay, you meet me halfway. What do you want? Like I don't know what my main character's house looks like. I have no idea what color the drapes are, what kind of chairs she sits. No idea. Don't care. But couldn't think of it. People will sometimes post in writers groups on social media. What's your main character's favorite song? What's their favorite breakfast? I'm like, I have no idea.
People are so
that means nothing to me.
full of
I
shit.
mean, again, it's not wrong to do that. That's awesome that you're that deep dive into this world you've created and these people who are real to you, and you dream about your main characters. I can't imagine this, but it's just me. But it's more interactive. Harlan Ellison, one of my heroes, and he would hate my stuff, but he was asked once, long time ago, this would be even before pre-internet, I'm pretty sure, when video games, everyone was getting an Atari or an Intellivision, and this was starting. And someone asked, he said, you want to know what the perfect entertainment system would be? It would be something that anyone could access, that cost nothing to create, but could create limitless possible worlds and characters and scenarios that would require no electricity, no battery, no power system whatsoever, except the player's own imagination, and would actively engage the player's own imagination in creating the world that the designer wanted to create, and one that would never expire, never go bad, could last forever, that the player could then pick up and re-engage with in a different way the next time they play it. And he said, not only is such a thing possible, it's been around for centuries. It's a book. And that speaks to what you were just talking about, and what I like to do. If there's nothing wrong with giving the reader everything and explaining every little detail of everything, and that's what King does so brilliantly. A guy could write about his laundry and we'd be like, oh my God, this is great. But to me, like with you, the stuff that doesn't, some of the most important stuff in a book is not in the book. There's not a word mentioned of it. Rutger Hauer, one of my favorite actors, he's great even in the worst films you've ever seen. You still have to watch him. He said, what interests me about a film is what's happening outside the frame. Which you think about, it doesn't make any sense. There's nothing happening outside the frame. You can't see it. It doesn't exist. It's all edited here. But I'm sure what he meant the same thing. It's what's implied. It's what the viewer, or the reader in this case, brings to the table and engages their own imagination and their own desires and needs into creating with the author or the filmmaker or the actor this new thing that neither one of them could have done without the other, or anticipated without the other. Love scenes that people think I'm weird. My favorite love story is The Remains of the Day, which most people think is a terribly depressing film. It may be, but the scene, I don't know if you've seen it, that you can, and I'm no snob. You want to show love in all its glorious bluebirds singing, sweaty sheets detail. Great, do it well, and I'm there. But the whole story is about Anthony Hopkins playing a very repressed, emotionally man. He's a butler. He's like the best butler ever, but he's completely emotionally repressed and hidden. You never see his emotions. Emma Thompson plays the housekeeper of the manor house that they both work in. And it's very clear, although it's never stated ever, that they have feelings for each other. And there's one scene where he's sitting in his room reading. I encourage you to YouTube this. He's reading a book, and she walks in to tell him something about the house. And he says, what are you reading? He's like, just a book. What kind of book? She's curious because she knows nothing about him. He's like almost a robotic kind of a Spock figure. It's like, what kind of books does he like? You could know this guy his whole life and never know what he would read. And she said, he says, please, I'm very tired. And it ends up with her, he stands up in his chair and he's holding his book like this, just please let me rest. I'm very tired. I get no time with myself. And she's in his face and she's prying the book out of his hands so she can see what she's dying to know. It's his curiosity is making her crazy. What's he reading? And it doesn't really matter what he's reading. But as she's standing in front of him, prying the book out of his hands, he's staring at her. I mean, they're this close. All these stiff, formal English people who refer to each other as Mr. and Mrs., they're this close. They're so physically near each other. And the way he's looking at her without saying anything, with no music in the background, nothing, as she's trying to pry this book out of his hands, is the most incredible romantic moment I've ever seen in a film. That to me spoke volumes, and they didn't say anything. That was hotter than any montage in the sheets for me, because it made me bond with him and emotionally experience what they were both experiencing. And she, of course, she had no idea he was looking at her this way. If she had looked up and seen him, God knows what could have happened. But she's worried about the book. Brilliantly directed, brilliantly acted. YouTube it if you haven't seen it. Yeah, I'm like, this is my favorite romantic scene ever in any film. And there's a lot of great ones out there, but again, it's what wasn't shown, what wasn't said, and what it made you do as a viewer, or in our case, reader. So yeah, I don't spend a lot of time describing like how my characters look, like what their appearance is or what they wear or their car. Let the reader fill that in. Let them participate because they want to. I know when I'm reading a book, I get a mental image of who the characters are. And if the author turns on the next page and tells me, oh, he's 6 foot tall with shocking red hair, I'm like, okay, I pictured somebody else. Now I've kind of detached from that character a little bit because now you're forcing me to rethink the character. Unless it really matters, let the reader do all that. Let them fill in the details. Just give them broad strokes that you need to so they know where to go. Take them to the mall, let them decide what store to go in.
Man, with the analogies, man, I'm telling you, I can quote this episode at least 20, 30, 40 times every time. It's
I'm
unreal.
A typical old guy. I will talk your ear off all day long if you let me.
Man, it's so funny because I do remember talking about you talking about this last episode, but you didn't go into it. And I'm actually, as you were saying all that, I was thinking about the legal ramifications. Like, could I put this on YouTube right now? Could I put that clip up? I don't think it's a problem.
I don't know. I would think if it's on YouTube, you could share a link.
Right, but what I'm thinking, if like could I share it and we can both watch it right now and kind of critique it? Could we do that?
I don't know. We could try.
Whatever. If I get a cease and desist, I'll just edit this part out.
Yeah, just cut that part out. But
I'm gonna try it because I'm really into it. Because I'll be honest with you, my favorite rom-com, because I'm right there with you. My favorite rom-com is actually a movie called The Breakup with Vince Vaughn and Jennifer Aniston.
Yes.
And my favorite, the reason that I love it so much is because it's so real. It's not the typical thing where, because you can plot a rom-com out like nobody's business, especially if you're like into like writing it in any degree. The moment you sit down, you're like, all right, so they're gonna have a bubbly type of interactive. She's gonna be an overstressed workaholic. He's gonna be some carefree whatever the heck. Midway through, they're gonna kind of like fall in love, but they're the odd couple, right? They're not supposed to be together.
Right.
Then about maybe hour 20 in, they're gonna have some fall through. Oh my God, I can't believe you told my mom that my dog was pregnant. That she wasn't supposed to know until last week.
Yeah.
Then they have some terrible breakthrough, and even you as the audience is like, all right, that doesn't seem as dramatic as they're making it. Like, they were supposedly in love, and now it's like everything's over this. All right, whatever. And then 15 minutes from that, he's at the airport talking about don't leave. And then end of the movie.
That's the cliche, yeah.
But Vince Vaughn, that break thing is that they had it goes through the same strokes, but then they stay broken up. Spoiler alert for the people that haven't seen it, and if you haven't, I mean, what's wrong with you? A little late. Came out like I don't even know what 2006.
Oh yeah, it's an old one now.
Yeah, and I mean, I just said Vince Vaughn's name. Think about it, Vince Vaughn. Come on, when was the last time you heard of him?
Yeah, it's been a while.
Yeah, great actor by the way, but the ending scene of that movie, which is to me the most exactly what you said, is just one of those things that is just so real. And to me, as exactly how you said, more steamy than any crazy, sex scenes that people are so addicted to nowadays. I do not understand why. If you want to watch porn, just watch it. But what they do is they literally just have an interaction. It just jumps to I can't remember if it was a couple months or a couple years later, and they meet each other in the street, and it's just like one of those things of like, oh my God, hi, how are you? And they don't go out to dinner, they don't get lunch after. There's no like lingering thought of like, oh, maybe they're gonna get back together. They shake hands. You can see it in their eyes that they have and still have that little bit of like, affection for one another, but it's not love anymore. It's more like respect.
Yeah.
And to me, again, it's just beautifully acted, beautifully written, and just the entire structure of the story. It makes so much sense because when you sit back, it's just, I think it's something that especially people that are young don't really have like a concept of. Well, I'm young. I'm talking so much out of my ass right now.
Yeah.
But
Well,
it's like you think that love is forever, and I'm not trying to sound like I'm like jaded or anything like that, but and there are certain loves that definitely are, but I think that certain people just can't let go. Like they can't understand that a concept of like a relationship that lasted 2 years could be great, but it could just be great at that
yeah,
2 years. Know what I mean?
that's
Like
all it is.
their logic is like, no, those 2 years, justify the fucking 8 years we're gonna go through hell. But
Yeah,
which is not true. It's like, call it quits, shake hands, mutual respect. It's not that you hate the other person. It's just like for those 2 years of your life, that snapshot, how you were where you were at mentally and where they were at mentally, it perfectly aligned and you were a great pair. You were interwoven. But then eventually that can just dissipate or anything. It's not anything negative on your part or their part. It's just genuine. You
it
know,
just is. Yeah,
and
it's so complex.
yeah, exactly. And it's not to say that there isn't that love and I'm that is that lasting love of, that marriage, and I've seen it and we've all seen it. Well, hopefully we all seen it. And it is genuine and it is real. And I'm not saying that that doesn't exist, but you also have to compliment, tip your hat to the other side and bow out when bow out when you buy out. How many people do you see that are in a miserable like idea, a miserable relationship that wasn't miserable at the start, but just went over throughout time? And it's just like, hang your hat when you're down.
Yeah, exactly. It doesn't always last forever, and maybe it's not supposed to. And yeah, you said young people have trouble relating to that stuff because they just haven't experienced it yet.
Mm,
I can't relate to young people's music because it doesn't speak to my experience. It's just where you are as a person. Now, if as a younger person you've been through some heavy, complicated breakups and relationships, you're going to be able to relate to it a little bit more. Just like a young person who's had 20 surgeries because they've been sick their whole lives understands pain and suffering and impotence and that sense of your own mortality that most young people don't have. Most people, young people, and lots of older people walk around acting and planning and doing stuff as if they're going to be around forever. The older people don't do that because they've seen it. We talked about horror movies being a rehearsal for
mhm.
death last time we talked about it. The old people don't go to horror films because they know what death's about. They've seen it. They can feel it coming. But young people, ooh, this is exciting. Um, it's the same thing. If you've been through a lot of those relationships, or even just one really heavy one, as a young person, you can relate to that film. But yeah, the older you are, and the more stuff like that you've been through, yeah, it speaks to you more. And like you said, a lot of people just shuffle through the remnants. They're going through the motions of the relationship they had, almost like a ghost that you see walking. It walks through the room and you know waters a plant that's not there, and then it walks into the next room through the wall because it's endlessly repeating this meaningless action from something that's long dead, but that's all it knows to do. You see marriages and relationships like that with people, and God, that's got to be awful. But they live in this kind of twilight of denial where if we don't look at it, it doesn't exist. If we just keep doing what we've always done and pretend like it's all good and it's okay, then we don't have to face this difficult, painful thing that, we'll just live around it. Um, it's like if a loved one, like grandpa died in his chair in the corner. Well, if we just don't look at him and don't think about it, we'll just pretend grandpa's still here because we can't face grandpa's dead. People have a tremendous capacity to live in denial, um, and that's right material for writing stuff too. Um,
My
in
God.
Remains of the Day, Anthony Hopkins' character he's bound by a sense of duty and what he is supposed to do, so much so that he is emotionally strangled and can't have anything as chaotic and amazing and as uncontrollable as love come into his life. And that scene in the film, I'll just spoil it for everybody, is the only moment in the film you get where you can see a crack in his facade, and then it's gone. But it makes that moment incredibly powerful, and it builds towards an ending where you think, okay, he's retired, his job is over. He's got, this is his last chance to experience this kind of loving bond with another person. Will he take it? And it it's a powerful film. Great movie in every way. But that's my favorite love story. And people think I'm odd because it doesn't go well, but it's so real. It's so real, and the potency of that scene and everything that's not shown and not said is just gigantic. Nothing anyone could have written, as far as like them saying or doing in that scene would have been better than them not saying or doing anything and just letting you see for a moment the guy behind the mask. Amazing scene. If you can't bring it up here, check it out later. You'll see what I mean.
Oh no, I'm gonna pull it up. I'm gonna pull it up in a minute. But
Okay.
my God, we could do that. We really should do this a lot more often because you could be my therapist. You just helped me realize two things, and I'm not kidding. So
Oh God,
one of
me
the
as a
things.
therapist.
Well, you just did it.
I talked to one for an hour once. He's in a straitjacket now.
Well, one of the things that you just helped me like kind of like break down was my mom. All right, so my mom, I like to talk about all the things I went through. My mom grew up in a dictatorship in a foreign country.
Oh
So
geez.
yeah, and then like she like all the things that she went through in life, immigrant, all these, I'm not going to get into all the amazing things that she did, but very respectable for where we came from and everything, that how that flower started anyway, from that seed that she was, the tree that she ended up becoming. Unreal. So her entertainment choice, what she watches, is Lifetime. She doesn't watch anything of horror, anything of like, her comedy is like the lightest comedy there is. Nothing about dark comedy, nothing about none of that. None of that. The moment they start saying like any mortality joke, she's like, all right, I'm getting out of here. I'm not gonna be hearing this filth.
Right.
Uh and that go action, if she's watching a movie and there's like a car chase, she's like, no, I can't do this. My heart's like going out, like losing my mind. It's like, all right, that's like, relax. And then I'm over there like, relax. You just helped me realize exactly that thing that you just said, kind of like with the old people and mortality. She's like, yeah, she doesn't need to go through that. Her life was exciting
Yeah.
enough. She wants to watch Lifetime now. She wants
Right.
things to end and start nicely. The same
Yeah.
way that like, I guess I felt like my life is exciting enough, so I have to like live in escapism. Her life was plenty exciting. She's like, nah, I'm fine. I need to do I do need to do escapism, which to me is Lifetime. Nice
Right.
little
Yeah.
formatted stories. They start with a happy smile, end with with an even happier smile. Boom, boom, bow. That's how she wants it.
Yeah.
And then the second thing you helped me realize was like the exact kind of the same thing that you said, that I guess I was fortunate, but at the time I did not feel fortunate at all, that I went through those type of relationships at a kind of like a younger age that did kind of just give that, was kind of the thing that instilled that idea in me, that water bucket feeling of like, all right, yeah, love isn't kind of like this thing. You could have like a short little span and it could be respectable. It doesn't have to be like all this like crazy negative things. And when you are able to translate those type of feelings and emotions into your writing, and you're able to, instead of going into, because to me the people that, again, I'm not trying to judge, and I'm not saying that these people, that there's not a reason for these people. Like you said, it's a buffet and there should be a whole bunch of different choices, and it's it's just my preference. But to me, those long-winded uh you know contracts of love that people like to, these volumes of vows that people like to like show, to me that's like almost fantasy. That's like their fantasy of what love is. That's, they always wanted XYZ, or they always wanted a portrayal of this like a type of like whimsical attraction, and then they wrote kind of like their fantasy of it. I think the realer aspects
Yeah.
are kind of like those small little nuances, which is what I was saying earlier about the book. Maybe in order to kind of combat some of those ideas of like not getting so much nuance, they could have just been like small little things like picking up his phone when Farah, what's the name? Farah, what's the name?
Fajardo.
Fajardo, I'm sorry.
Bob Fajardo.
When Fajardo picks up his phone to look up the latest thing, or to get a text from one of his like thing, he could have easily seen maybe 4 missed calls from his wife that he just breezes over. Small little nuances.
Yeah.
You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Things like that are important. Yeah.
Yeah, like things like that to me are what the build up of, and to me it's my favorite thing of not only just horror writing or thriller writing, but just all writing, when you're able to actually put up the steps and kind of set up the pieces and the it's actually one of the things that we talked about last episode when you were here. And it was my favorite thing about your writing is that you agree with me that mysteries and thrillers should be left up to the reader and not something that's an exposition dump at the end of the story, which is something that I've seen more and more often, that people think the idea of like a crazy thriller is having this crazy contrived idea. It was like, oh, we thought it was a murderer, but really it's a serial murderer, but really it's a dog whose owner was like going
Yeah.
deeper and deeper and deeper. And the only way that you can even pick it up is by having like some like Sherlock character who's just like, oh yeah, let me tell you how it is, and let me dump on you to make you feel stupid for not knowing the obvious thing. It was like, oh, don't you remember how we woke up into the building and the air was like 3 degrees like warmer? I didn't tell you about it then, but I knew it.
Right.
And
Yeah.
like that, and like all that stuff. It's like, all right, that's not fair. And I actually heard that a great analysis of the Sherlock books versus the Sherlock TV show with Benedict Cumberbatch,
Mhm.
Cumber Whale, whatever,
Yeah. Doc Strange.
Hump Whale, I don't know, whatever it is. Uh, when is that, and not knocking the show, because I actually am a fan of the show, but I thought it was a great analysis. They were saying that the book was very specifically plotted out that you could work out the mystery along with Sherlock. That it was
Yeah.
like it's like that you were a third person to Sherlock and Watson. That you were in that group and you were
Yeah.
able to piece together the theory and the murder and the mystery along with Sherlock. Whereas the show is kind of more
Mhm.
based up to set the setting, but then the entire mystery is all dumped on the ingenuity and the genius of Sherlock, which again
Yeah.
is like brings up that whole thing that we talked about last time with the Mary Sue character. Like a character shouldn't be
Mhm.
that level of perfect. And there's another nuance that I think you hit with your team. The characters, and there's obviously a main character, but the people that bring down, or the people that do the investigation, I'm not going to say bring down because it's kind of the opposite of what happens, but uh the people that do this investigation to find Edward, it's a team. It's not one crack job, one crack dude just doing the impossible. It's a team of people doing it together. And to
Yeah.
me, it's again, it's the whole real aspect of it. It's everything that we've been talking about, really, this entire episode. It's grounding the reality. I mean, grounding the story in a sense of reality, and then allowing the readers to kind of walk through that reality instead of
Yeah.
having that reality dumped on them like a huge bucket of water after 450 pages.
Yeah. The Sherlock Holmes TV show almost treats you like a child. You walk you through, look at this, look at this. Oh, you don't understand it? Oh, sit down. I'll explain it to you. It's a bit condescending, and I love
Mm-hmm.
Benedict Cumberbatch, and it's a good show. But yeah, that's a trend. And I think what it is, it's a constant, and I understand this, and I feel this when I write. There's a reason I was 54 when I first decided to finally get a book out. And there's this terrible feeling, no matter what kind of book you're writing, you're like, oh, if I'm writing a love story or a sci-fi story or a mystery, whatever, it's like, God, there's so many of them. There's so many great ones that have already been written. There's only so many ways to meet someone and fall in love with them. There's only so many ways to kill someone and try to get away with it and not leave any clues. There's only so many ways to build a robot and an alien race to threaten another alien race. And they've all been explored. Thousands of books all over the world. It's like, okay, I'm competing with Conan Doyle, who learned all that from Poe, going back to Israfel Rising. I'm competing with Tom Harris and Stephen King and Agatha Christie. And what the hell makes me think that I'm going to be able to create a mystery or a suspenseful story that hasn't already been told a trillion times and done better by someone else? There's going to be nothing new about it, nothing original about it, nothing that anyone who reads the genre regularly isn't going to see through from the word go. why am I going to waste my time embarrassing myself by showing me doing a pale, mediocre imitation of people that have written better stuff decades before me? This is a loop that played in my head constantly for years. And it took me a long time to realize that the only thing that's original and unique about my book or your book is my voice or your voice. You know, like the movie The Aristocrats about the joke. It's the same joke. You see 20 people tell the same joke, but some of them are funnier than others, even though the joke is the same because of the delivery, the timing, the pacing, their tone, their inflection, their expressions, the way they tell you the joke, the way they look, all those little personal, unique qualities that I have as a writer, you have, everybody has as a writer, is the original thing about your book. The only original thing in this book is my voice. I'm not saying it's special or better than anybody else's voices, but it's mine. It's not anyone else could have told this story, maybe better, but it wouldn't have sounded quite exactly the same. You know, you get 10 bands sing Stairway to Heaven, same song, each sounds a little different. You're going to prefer some and not prefer others and decide who's best and who's worst, whatever. But everyone's got their own sound. And when I realized that, I was like, okay, I can try to write a book now. That was a huge hurdle for me. But yeah, you're competing. And I think getting back to what you're saying, the Holmes show, they're competing with every Sherlock Holmes book and show and movie there's ever been, and there's been a lot of them. So they're like, oh God, we can't just repeat the same thing. Everybody's seen that already. They can get that on Turner Classic Movies. We've got to do something. We've got to up our game. It's got to be bigger. It's got to be more clever, more bizarre, more twisted, more convoluted. It's like love scenes in films. We have to push the envelope more. We have to show this much more skin and have this much more sweat and panting. Or in sci-fi, we've got to have, Star Wars had like 100 ships attacking. We've got to have like 200. And it's a constant game of one-upsmanship that you end up losing the plot, literally, often. And it's contrived and forced, and everyone sees through it, and it doesn't work. And less is sometimes more, getting back to where we started. And, every time you make a spaghetti, you don't have to make the greatest spaghetti ever. You don't have to make it better than your last spaghetti. You just have to make it a good spaghetti. It's the competition and the need. And of course, we all want to write the best book we can. And of course, I'd love to say this is the best mystery ever. More people have bought this, and I love that. But we've got to work against that tendency and that urge to compete. And, my book went this far, no other book went this far before, because you end up, like you say, with convoluted plot lines that aren't believable. I was terribly worried in Israfel Fallen because, every mystery, like I said, it's the big reveal. You reveal who the killer is and why they did it. And you've hopefully hidden them in plain sight all along. I thought, okay, if you have too much light on them, the audience, the reader figures it out very early on. Oh, it's obviously it's this person. Then they've got to slog through 150 pages like, yeah, I knew it was them, big deal. If you know Darth Vader is Luke's father all along, Empire is a pretty boring film. But so you can't put too much light on them, but you can't keep them so hidden and so far from what's going on that when you do the big reveal, it's them. It doesn't make any sense. And no matter what explanation you give them, it's like, it's forced. They don't buy it. It's got to make sense to them. The ideal reaction that you want is, it's them. Oh, you know what? That makes perfect sense. Now that I look at it in hindsight, that shit was in my face. That was in front of my face the whole time. I should have seen it. That's the reaction you want. And that's what I was going for. And writing those scenes was really hard. Not only revealing who the guilty party or parties were, but having them explain to the other person in the scene, this is why this happened. These were my motivations. This is what we were thinking. And then the reader go, okay, now that you explain it, you're answering my questions as to why they would do this. Okay, I can accept that. And that was, I thought, God, I've never done this before. How do I know if I've pulled it off? You know, how do you know if you know the person is the person or persons is the guilty party or parties? How do you know whether or not anyone else can see them? You know what I mean? If you don't know if it's a surprise because you already know. It's like you have to have, that's another case where your beta readers and alpha readers are so important, because they'll look at it and go, oh, you know what, that's no surprise, or that doesn't make any sense. But every one of them came back and said, you surprised me, I did not expect that. And I thought, okay, pulled it off. So
Sorry about that.
yeah, no, hey, life happens.
No, but you usually have no
Yeah, that was
signs.
my big tension. And I didn't want to do too much, but I had to have everything explained because so much had happened for 2 books. It had to all tie together. And I apparently, so far, everyone's telling me I pulled it off. So I got lucky.
Well, that's a really
So
interesting concept of what you were saying, because one, it's the same thing that I've repeated multiple times after our episode. And actually, somebody quoted you this week. Yeah, Tim Heath actually. Yeah,
Jesus.
quoted your episode saying I think the specific way that you worded it last time was, if you gave the same plot to 10 other authors, you get 10 different manuscripts. I think that's how you worded it
Yeah.
last time. And he quoted
Yeah.
you specifically on that, and I have to agree to it to this day, and I'll probably get it stamped on my on like a book somewhere, put on a throw pillow, because it's something that I have to remind myself often. And it's actually something that you've kind of like given me a lot of inspiration, because it's a thought that I get I can't tell you the amount of times that I get ideas, and then I'll see like some show that's coming on Netflix in 2 years, and I'm like, those bastards stole my idea. Oh my God,
Yeah.
I'm tapped. There's a wiretap. They got me.
Yeah.
They got me. They're
Yeah.
stealing my ideas now. And in my head,
Mhm.
I'm that idea is immediately scrapped. I was like, all right, well, can't do that now. And
Yeah.
it's like, and it's an idea that I liked and I was like impassioned about, and now I have to scrap it because I don't like it. It's like, no, if anything, now they just gave you a perfect reference point, a perfect map on how not to do that. If you
Yeah.
can watch that now, pick up what you like and don't like, and you're like, I bet, transfer. That's
Exactly.
it.
Yeah. You just have to change things up a bit. Yeah, that happens. When I came up with the idea, okay, a killer recreating murders from Poe stories, I thought, well, God, someone's done that by now. Surely, Poe's our first great writer. He's been written about and read endless. This has got to be the oldest. There's got to be 20 of these out there. And I
The
Googled and
sevens.
I looked and I searched and I was like, I don't really see where anyone's done exactly what I'm talking about doing. It's like, oh, okay. If someone says, well, he obviously copied this from this, like, okay, well, I didn't, but fair enough. It's not so clever and original that no one else could have come up with it. But I thought, you know what? I'll put my spin on it. But that happens. Yeah, God, I was big in the 80s as a angst-ridden outsider teenager of surprise writing poetry. And I thought the best poem I had written in 1986 was a poem that I called Rain Man. Imagine my surprise 2 years later when I turned on the TV and saw a trailer for a film called Rain Man. Like, they took my title.
Do you remember the poem?
So it's all out. No, I don't remember any of it now, and I didn't save any of them. Thank God. Um, horrible, horrible. But no, it's all out there. I get the same feeling. I'm like, God, somebody else is out there. King's going to write this, and everybody's saying, well, okay, there goes my book. It's just out there. The book I'm working on right now, the third M. Sullivan novel, since this is technically the first, and she's the main detective in Israfel Fallen. It's her story, just the same way the first book is Bob's story. And you learn a lot more about her, and it's both funnier and darker at the same time than the first one. But she's my MC. So the book I'm writing right now, I got the title from a song lyric. I might have mentioned this last time. I was listening to a song, and part of the lyric was, "The 8 legs of the devil are crawling up my spine."
I remember.
I thought, oh my God, that's a great title for a book. So I thought, okay, oh, well, someone's used it already. So I Google Eight Legs of the Devil. And there's actually like a microbrewery somewhere that has a beer called the Eight Legs of the Devil. Imagine that. But no one else had written a book with that title. Okay, I got to do that. So now, after plotting the first two books, every detail for a long, long time before I started writing, and having no idea actually what I was going to call the book till it was almost done, now I have a title I've got to use that I have no story for. So I'm like, I'm flying by the seat of my pants for the first time ever as a writer, trying to build a story around this title, and I think I've got one. I started it. It's going to be weirder, but I have to use it. That's such it's like the title of a Giallo film. That's so catchy. I've got to use it because I love Giallo films, and I feel like I write Giallos anyway. So I'll have to come up with an even stranger title next time. But yeah, I got to use that. So, and of course the cover will have to be a spider, you know, because no one likes spiders. Even people who have snakes as pets don't like spiders. Nobody likes spiders. They creep everybody out. So what better metaphor for some kind of creepy, sinister story than the spider? I mean, every culture sees spiders in a negative way. You know, the Native Americans saw every animal as having a spirit, eagles and bears and whatnot. Spiders were always negative. They were demons or tricksters or liars. You can't trust a spider. So, and since Along Came a Spider is already taken as a title, The Eight Legs of the Devil will be my title. And I'm working away at it, hoping to have it done by the end of the year.
Oh my God. Well, we're gonna have to trade some plot points there because I actually just came up with I mean, we already talked about it last time how I have ADHD when it comes to writing. The moment I'm writing one book, I have like, 9 other ideas calling my name.
Oh yeah.
I got hit with one about a week and a half ago, 2 weeks, that I feel has been brewing in me for like maybe a year subconsciously, just like out of like the TV shows I've been watching. I've been like getting like more into like historical stuff and like some pirate stuff and just like things like that. And the thing that ended up brewing, my God, I cannot wait to talk to you about it. We're probably gonna have to talk the majority off like about it like off recording, because my God, I mean I'm out of my mind to talk to you about it. But one
Okay.
thing that got me off guard was, I don't know if you talked about it last time or I forgot, but I did not know that thing about poetry. I actually was really into poetry myself. How do you feel about this poem? It's how's it start? Evolution is constitution, whatever the route. I know that I'm in control of my path, but there's always a doubt. Voices in our heads, are they within or without? Does a flower ever dream as a seed of its sprout? How do you feel about that?
I like that. I like the duality of that, and the questioning of what is real and what isn't. I'm a Philip K. Dick reader, a bunch of his stuff up there. So what is real and what isn't is yeah, that's cool. That's clever. If I could write like that, I would have kept it.
Oh no. Uh the reason I bring it up is exactly what you just said right there. It's the idea that you can, it also brings up to what we were talking about before, is the idea of brevity. The reason that I like poetry, and I think the reason that you got into poetry and the reason why you're into brevity now, is that poetry is that exact definition. I mean, I'm sure everyone at some point had a teacher that in 3rd grade made them do some level of poetry, a haiku or whatever. And the
Yeah.
main thing that was stamped in your head was you have to pick the smallest amount of words to say the most amount of things in a tight little frame. That's what you
Yeah.
got. In a haiku, what, it's 575? You
Yeah.
got that much to say a significant thing.
Yeah.
And like the whole art of it was obviously you have the people that would be like fart cheese and like
Yeah.
just go by the count, and then there's people that would take that and actually like develop a little story about it. And the
Oh
better
yeah.
and the whole genius of the haiku, and I think that's why it's like a genius poem structure, is that it's so limiting that it forces people to really go outside the box. It's like the 6 word story. I think the same author that quoted you also quoted that. It's you're so limited by the structure. And I'm such a hippie. I hate the idea of structure. But it's like when you are put in those braces, it really forces the creativity to come out of you in ways that are just untapped.
Oh yeah, and some people are better suited to that than others. I mean, and there's, my God, there's plenty of stuff that is epic length that is wonderful. I think Poe's our greatest poet. I think Walt Whitman is clearly the close second, and other people
Robert
would switch
Frost.
it. But yeah, look at Leaves of Grass. It's a novel length poetic epic. Or look at the Iliad or the Odyssey. There's no brevity in Homer, but the beauty of the language and the images that are created. It's like Shakespeare. You could reduce Shakespeare. There's a famous script that they present all of Shakespeare's works in a 1-2 hour show. You could run through the plot and get people the point of it, but you're missing, and this is the downside of brevity, you're missing the beauty of language itself and the imagery that you can create. And if you've got the skills and the talent, you can really take someone's hand and soar with it. I did some acting in college, and one of the plays, the best play I was ever in, was Waiting for Godot by Beckett. And I knew it was a classic. I'd heard of Samuel Beckett, but I hadn't read any. And they said, well, you can audition for the show. I'm like, it's 4 guys. I'm like, oh, well, okay, maybe. Because there wasn't a whole lot of buzz in the theater department. No one was enthusiastic about doing this legendary show that created a whole new genre of theater. I was like, well, I've heard of Beckett. Let me find out what Beckett's about. And I went to the library and got the script, and I flipped through it. And I'm like, okay, the plot is these 2 guys waiting by a tree on a country road, waiting for a guy who never shows up. And then the next day they come back and they wait for him again, and he never shows up. That's the whole show. Like, what? Okay, this could be a 5-minute comedy sketch. Why is this a play? Why is this considered such a gigantic major work? Why does this guy have a Nobel Prize for literature? That's it. That's the whole thing. And then I picked up the script. And I was reading it, and it's dialogue, and a lot of it is very brief. There's some beautiful poetry and imagery in there, but a lot of it's very brief. Let's go. We can't. Why not? We're waiting for Godot. Oh, you think he'll come today? Well, he might come today, but he might come tomorrow. And it's like, and I'm reading it, and I was just like reading it like you read, a grocery list, skimming through it. And I'm like, I don't get it. What is so special about this? And then I went to the audition. I got the part because there's 4 parts and 4 people auditioned, literally. And so we got on stage, and I thought, well, okay, at least I'm on stage. And we started walking around and speaking these words to each other. And it blossomed. It came to life. There's so much in there, and it goes back to, again, what isn't said. And it is full of poetry and meaning and depth and layers. And if you just look at it, you don't see it. It's almost like reading a recipe. It's like, I'm hungry. Well, I'm still hungry. No, but if you follow the recipe, the end result is wonderful. And so I don't, in being kind of a cheerleader for brevity and keeping it simple and keeping things tight, which is my personal preference as a reader and as a writer, I don't want to diminish stuff that is just beautiful for its own sake, and people who can really, like Whitman, take something and soar with it. I mean, look at The Raven, back to my buddy Poe. For in terms of actual story, it's not much there, but I mean, find a better poem. Poetry is brilliant that way, and it doesn't have to be flowery, beautiful poetry. You read Charles Bukowski, who's as street and gutter as you can get, downright crude and vulgar sometimes. It's his best stuff is breathtakingly humane and beautiful. Whether he's talking about drinking beer and pissing in his kitchen sink, he can make that beautiful and a universal human relatable thing because he's Charles Bukowski. So yeah, I don't want to denigrate that stuff, but the best poetry does that, just like the best songwriting, something else I'm trying to do kind of on the side. Yeah, there's magic in words. It's powerful stuff. That's why curses in literature and in life, and spells and incantations, they're all words. It's not just motions and potions. It's words. It's the meaning of the words. Harry Potter can wave that wand all he wants till he says something, it doesn't do anything. Words are powerful. So that's the medium that we use. What would we be without written and spoken language? I mean, just less hairy chimps.
Telepathic communication.
Yeah, I mean, someone must said you don't really know what you think about something until you sit down and write down what you think about something. Ooh. Which can be harder to do than you think. Why do you like your favorite film? Well, because it's great. Okay, explain it to someone who's never seen it. And you sit down, you write about what you like about it. It's very hard to do. Because you can get the plot, you can explain the sets and everything, but explaining why it's so great and why it's so special to you is a hard thing to do, and a great exercise as a writer. I'll do that sometimes.
So much hangs on the red wheelbarrow by the barn with the two chickens. I can't remember who wrote that, but that's one of those things that I love, because if somebody told you that drunk, or like when you were like half paying attention, you'd be like, what are you saying to me? Why are you talking about a red wheelbarrow? Why are you near me right now? Why are you in my bathroom? How are you in my house? But like when you pay attention to it and you realize, like, all right, and you just kind of like put things together, like, all right, well, a barn. So they probably use that wheelbarrow quite often. And then you start just like piecing things together. It's like, all right, so the whole point of that, even like little quote, and even that little slice of a poem, is that something as nuanced as a wheelbarrow, something that if you were to take a picture of, you're not even sure it would be the main focus of the picture. Someone would show you a picture of and be like, oh, what am I looking at here? Oh yeah, there's a bush, a red wheelbarrow, some chickens. Well, all right, what's the point? Is there a ghost or something? You wouldn't even pay attention to it. But so much hangs on that red wheelbarrow. Something so insignificant to somebody that doesn't know is so significant to another. And again, it's things like that I think people should always just really sit back on and understand that, to me, because again, I'm talking like so like such a high horse, but to me, that is the heart of what true writing is. A lot of reviews, going back to what we started this podcast with, always get on to either highlighting and giving the author a thumbs up for getting into the action within the first couple pages, or will downplay an author for not getting into the action soon enough. And the main thing that I always take away from that is like, all right, well, great that you feel that way, but like, shouldn't your merit only be on action? Pulp Fiction doesn't start, well, actually it does. It start off with that little whole like a robbery scene.
Yeah.
But when they introduce the characters of no, I can't remember their acting names, but when they introduced Samuel L. Jackson and the John Travolta character, the murderers, they're not committing a murder. They're talking about how a quarter pounder with cheese in France is called the Royale with cheese.
Yeah.
And that is, to me,
nothing to do with anything.
Nothing. And they don't even get into the meat of what they're doing until 15 minutes in, when they hit like, motherfucker, that whole scene.
Yeah.
They don't get into that until 15, 20 minutes of the movie.
Oh yeah.
And unless you're have a problem, I don't even know what to say if you really turned off Pulp Fiction after 15 minutes because they didn't get into the action. Yeah. I mean, that's just a weird sentiment to think of. It's like, a good writing is the action. Without getting, steamy, without getting all that weird thing, like foreplay is just as important as sex is. You can't just jump into something that's awesome. You have to build. The build up is just as important. And if it's written correctly, you can build up for 80% of the book.
Oh,
if it's done correctly.
Exactly. And that's the experience of just all of that itself is I feel bad for younger people because our attention spans keep getting shorter and shorter and shorter. People won't sit still for anything. Most people, if you ask them to sit still for 2 minutes and say and do nothing in a chair, they can't do it. They get fidgety. You know, does anyone just sit in a field, look at the trees and feel the breeze on their skin and listen to the birds anymore? It's something simple like that. And, maybe jot down a few thoughts, I'm cold, this fly won't leave me alone, whatever. Just experience living itself. Do we always have to be engaged in action? Now, no one's going to read a book about someone just doing that all day long, unless it's an interior monologue that turns out to be great. You could actually do a book about a guy sitting in a field looking at a tree. Beckett, again, did a whole chess game where two guys played chess and neither one actually ever moved a piece on the board. And it's a riveting scene to read. I know it sounds crazy. You just have to read it to see what I mean. Critics of Godot wrote, well, this is a play where nothing happens twice. The first act, nothing happens. Second act, nothing happens. It's those other moments, the stuff almost, as Hauer said, outside the frame that matter and are relatable as universal experiences. Like you said with foreplay, if you're going to dinner with someone, you don't just walk in, sit down, eat, and leave. You might help them set the table. You might help them pour the drinks. You're chatting, you're doing stuff. It's part of the experience of what you're doing. It's not just performing a function that you have to do in order to survive. It's the whole experience. It's what you're wearing. It's what people are saying. It's the smells. It's drinking in all of life as much as you can. And the best writing does that. You're absolutely right. To a scientist, the moon is a dead rock floating in space. No poet has ever written a poem saying the moon is a dead rock in space. If you're a poet, the moon is much, much more. And if you can take a dead rock in space and make it something much, much more, you're definitely a creator and you're definitely living life and experiencing it to its fullest. And the best writing does that, I think, and the best painting and the best music, the best singing.
What's something that I feel is gonna make you shiver a little bit? There is a person that I sent an ARC to, and I sent them volume 1 in pieces, and they read the prologue and loved it. But then based on their notes, I realized that they thought it was chapter 1 of the book, and I was like, oh no, that was a prologue. I'm sorry that I didn't explain that to you. And then after having that information, immediately said, oh, I would take that off. People don't like prologues.
I don't get that.
Right.
I know this is a thing.
Right.
Okay. I want someone to explain this to me. You're interested in reading a book because you believe this writer is going to tell you a story that you will find satisfying and enjoyable in some way. Doesn't matter what the book's about. And you're going to commit hours of your time and some of your money and your effort to read and understand because you believe that they're going to give you what you want and need. But you're going to start this transaction by ignoring the very first thing they're telling you. Because 3 more pages of prologue added onto this 600-page book is just too much for them to ask of you. But now, if they retitled the prologue chapter 1, you'd read it. So why do those 8 letters above the first pages of text shut people down and turn them off? Oh God, no. I can't for the life of me figure this out. It's like, going to dinner and you sit down and they bring you an appetizer. Like, oh, what? I came here for steak. What's that? No, I'm out, gone. What? No, just try the salad, try the soup. I don't get it. I just don't get it. And I, of course, have a prologue in this book. And because people were saying, people don't really read prologues, the second book has a prologue and an epilogue. So deal with that. I could have called it, chapter 43, but no, it's the epilogue. Deal with it. What is wrong? Trust me. You gave me $10. You don't trust me to ask you to read these 3 pages. If you skip these 3 pages, you're not going to understand. You're missing out on something that's happening. It's like buying an album and skipping the first song. I'm going to start with the second one. Why? I don't get it. I just don't get it. It's not even, is the word prologue offensive in and of itself somehow? Does it lessen the importance of the words? They're just as hard to write as the words in the rest of the book. I want to know. To me, it's like a sneak preview. A prologue is like a trailer for the book. It's if you're watching a show, that little scene before the credits, it kind of sets things up. Billy eats his cornflakes and he goes into his room and opens the closet door to put on his shirt, and there's a body hanging there. And the credits start. So you would just go straight to the credits, and then what happens after, not knowing why would you do? That's the prologue of that episode or movie. Why would you skip that? It's 3 pages. Read the damn thing. I don't get people. This is, the older you get, the more you sound like this.
You know what it immediately made me think of, and it's actually something that I remember last time we were both annoyed that we didn't get to, but it's music. To me, everything that you were just talking about is the exact perfect, the antithesis of putting on an album and listening to the full album. I feel like people don't do that as much as they should. I mean, and now a lot, to be fair, there are, especially nowadays, there are few and far albums that actually are created for this purpose.
Right. It's just
but
singles.
When they're made, I can't remember the rock album, but I'm a huge rap fan. So Kendrick Lamar, Mad City, his debut, that release is an hour, I want to say 45 minutes, and the man, I'm not kidding, runs through his entire life. Same thing with Biggie, Ride or Die. The first song, I'm not kidding, starts off with baby sounds like him being born, and then it ends with him being shot, being ready to die. Right. I mean, genius level architect. Oh, and Daft Punk, they recently just announced their retirement. Almost all their albums are like that, meant to be played in just a full structure. And to me, it's exactly what you said. It's like, if it's meant to be like that, and to me, art, I guess this is where I get really hippie. It's like, for as much as I think without audience, without audience, there's not as much of a purpose for a reader. Know what I mean? Like, there has to be someone to hear a tree fall in the forest for it to really make a sound.
Yeah, it doesn't.
At the same time, I don't feel like we should bend to that will. Like, I feel like whatever is in the person's heart as a creator should just be dumped into it. And however the purest form should be. And then people that like it or don't like it flock to it. But it shouldn't be corrupted or melded by that type of mentality. Just because you want to skip the outro, I have to make my next album without an outro. That's absurd. Yeah. Or you felt that there wasn't as much as a love sequence in my book. Hey, I'm going for brevity. Go screw. I don't know what you want from me. I'm making what I'm making. Now, the reason that I really went into that beginning of the podcast about the constructive criticism in your comments is that I love the way that not only you, but it's required in the industry to be able to take that commentary and filter it out in the way that it's like, all right, I know where I'm going, so I respect your commentary on here, but I'm gonna extend on that. But I'm really felt what you said here, and I'm 100% gonna pull that in for the next time that I write.
Yeah.
And I think as that grows, not only does the story grow and just character development and just also making it more grounded in reality, but you also get this awesome sense of just knowing yourself that is going to be progressive. I mean, one of my favorite things about writing is knowing the fact that for as ambitious and how excited I am for the things that I'm going to write, I know for a fact that my fifth book is going to be better written than my first. Whether it's well
Yeah.
received by people is a different matter, but just practice and math based is going to be a better book. So
Yeah.
just to understand that you're almost constantly swimming, and the moment that you stop paddling is the only time that your strokes get weaker. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
But even if
exactly.
you're doing a little doggy paddle, even if you start doing some, shifting genre or going whatever which way you want to do, as long as you're just moving, you're always going towards some type of island, you're always landing somewhere. And honestly, that really brings me into the eight legs of what was it again? The eight legs of
The
hell?
Eight Legs of the Devil.
The eight legs of the devil. What is this idea? Because I know that you told me we had this exact conversation, but you weren't there with the plot enough that you wanted to reveal anything.
Uh,
Do you feel more confident about it now? Could you give something out without going into spoilers?
yeah, I haven't written a whole lot yet, but I've thought a whole lot about it. I'm only about 3 chapters in. I'm sorry, a prologue and 3 chapters in. I'm now gonna stick to prologues whether I need them or not, just because I'm a defiant old man who's gonna shake his fist into the grave.
Oh no, I'm right
Um,
there with you. Believe me.
it takes place 2 years after Israfel Fallen, which resolves the whole Israfel storyline. Like I said, there is going to be a third Israfel book, but by the end of Israfel Fallen, the reader should be looking at that going, okay, well, what's the third book going to be about? Because everything is resolved. It's 2 years later, and a street kid, a homeless teenager, is looking to steal some stuff that they can pawn to get some money to leave town because they got to get out of town. They got to get out of their area, and they want to go out west. Um, and it is actually as this is a transgendered character. I made that choice because this is something we're all becoming increasingly aware of, and I think it's important for everyone to learn more about these new realities that we're all having to face, that people have been living with for millennia, but all the rest of us are finally getting up to speed to recognizing the struggles and the things these people go through. So I wanted to educate myself because I'm having to do research now for the character. But anyway, it's a transgendered female teenager, homeless. The oldest building in town is a 3-story manor house owned by this wealthy family. And she decides she's going, and you see a doctor come and go. He leaves in the morning, he comes back at night. He owns a medical building and does his thing, but the family keeps to themselves. No one knows what's going on there. It's just every house, every town has that one old big house that you never really see anybody go in or out of, but you know somebody lives there. Nobody talks to them. You know what I mean? So that kind of house, big old crumbling manor house that this doctor lives in. She decides she's going to break in, look around, because Doc's got money. So there's got to be money or jewelry or stuff she can steal after Doc goes to work every day and pawn at the local pawn shop and get on a bus and get out of town. And she's arranged to meet with a friend to do that. She breaks into the house and never comes out. And Sully is assigned to find out because the friend ends up going to the police saying, hey, my friend was supposed to meet me. I don't know where she is. I think something happened to her. And Sully is assigned to work on the case. It's a missing persons case. It's a missing teenager, missing runaway. They go missing all the time, right? They show up and it's all fine. And it's a big waste of her time, but they give Sully the case because she's just come off a couple of tough murder cases. And they kind of do this to give her a break. And it turns out to be tougher than any of her murder cases were because it unravels the mystery of what's going on with this doctor and is there anyone else in the house. So that's about all I can tell you. So
Oof.
and it seems to be the older and more well-to-do the family, the better hidden their secrets are and the more fucked up those secrets can be. So it's going to be weird.
Man, I like that a lot. I
Yeah,
like that a lot.
That's where it's going so far.
Man,
And Sully acquired a boyfriend. The subplot: Sully acquired a boyfriend in Israfel Fallen, and 2 years into the relationship, you kind of get to see where she's at with that, and she's kind of forced to decide, well, do I want to take this to the next level? I'm 48 years old. I'm not getting any younger. Do I finally want to settle down and have a real full-time relationship with someone, or can I just not leave this cop stuff alone? She chose a long time ago in her life that she was going to be a cop, not a wife or a mom, and that when you make big decisions like that in your life, you can often come to regret what you missed. The grass is always greener, right? If she'd become a mom and a wife, she'd have missed her chance to be a cop. So you come to a fork in the road. You have to take one path or the other. And she starts, every once in a while you look over at the other path and I wonder if I should have gone that way. So she's forced to make that choice in her life because this is like the perfect guy for her. So you meet him in the second book.
Man, that's a beautiful sentiment. Man, I almost want to dig deeper into it, but I don't want to get into too many spoilers. It did make me think of the ending of Israfel's Rising.
Mm-hmm.
The little mantra they say at the end. Well, you think it was Gaelic or something. What was it? How do you pronounce
she's
it?
Welsh. She's Welsh. I can't pronounce it. That's one of the several reasons I haven't done an audiobook is I can't speak well. Welsh is one of those languages. If you go to YouTube and look at tutorials, how to speak Welsh, and you'll have Welsh people telling you, oh, in English you say this, and in Welsh we say this. You listen to it and you look at the lettering and say, wait, that looks nothing like what you said, and I don't understand how this is pronounced like that. And actually only about 10% of Welsh people can speak Welsh. But Sully can, and that's actually explained in the second book. And there's a bit more of that. You also meet her mom in the second book, who is something else. But there's a bit more Welsh. Thank God for Google Translate. There's a bit more Welsh in the second and third books, and I can't speak it. But the Welsh are like all the Celts. They're immune to psychotherapy. They're their own special kind of crazy, and that is a lot of what Sully is. But at the end of the first book, it's she says, "Who is like us?" And they say, "No one." And she says, "Who is like me?" And they say, "No one." And I actually stole that from a biography of Richard Burton that his brother wrote. That's something his father would say to his friends in the pub. They would all answer, "No one." So that's where I got that. If you steal from multiple sources, it's research, not plagiarism. My motto is.
I know that the response was Neb, so
yep.
that was what. So Neb equals no one.
I don't know how it's pronounced though. I mean, Welsh is it's crazy. They do have a great word, and I don't know how it's pronounced. Some languages have words that we don't have in English. Like the Germans have the word Todlachen, which literally means death laugh. It means you laugh so hard and so heavily that you actually have a heart attack and die because something is that funny. We don't have that word in English. It's a great word and we have that. People die of it, but we don't have the word. The Welsh have a word. It's spelled Hiraeth. So Hiraeth. They probably pronounce it something like that. But it's a melancholy longing for things in the past that are gone. Jesus, we've all felt that. We don't have a word for that, but we know what that feels like. And the older you get, the more that you have. It's a great word. I got to learn how to pronounce it. But it's part of the discoveries that you find playing with other languages. But I had to decide who she was early on in the first book. She started out being Irish. I thought that's too stereotypical. I love the Welsh. I love their culture. They've got great, crazy stories. They might be the craziest of the Celts and the most poetic and interesting. And I thought, I'm going to make her Welsh. And so I'm learning more and more about the Welsh as I go on.
I know French. Well, the French have a word for, because we have you, meaning personal, and then we have you like general. But I know the French have a word for all three. Like they have a you singular, they have a you group, and they also have a you like singular within a group. Like they have all different ways. I know the Japanese have they have konnichiwa, but they have little things at the end, like suffixes at the end that make it personal. So there's konnichiwa to a dog, there's konnichiwa to a person of authority, there's konnichiwa to a person that's a subordinate, there's a konnichiwa to women, konnichiwa for men, konnichiwa
Yeah.
for every single thing you can imagine. Spanish have a word that I actually heard way too young, but it's a curse word used very rarely called azaroso. And what it means is it's like it's exactly what you said, that it's a word that really I have never heard in any other language, but everyone's felt it. Well, I at least met this type of person. Azaroso, if a person calls you that, it's like it's a person that brings bad will. It's not even that they're bad or like, well, like it's not even that they do dumb things or that they are dumb, but that in their core, like their soul, they bring badness.
Yeah. It
And
just,
and it is such a like a weighted word. It's not like, to me, it's not like any other curse word. Like I remember the first time that I ever like asked my mom, like as a little kid, like, oh, what does that mean? I remember like she like it like cut her ears. I don't know if that translate if that analogy translates to English. It sounds a lot better in Spanish, but like it just like made it like, what do you say? What did you just say to me?
yeah.
It's like, no, that's the worst word ever. Never even
Yeah.
repeat that near me. And again, like she, well, she's not really a curse word, but like, when she heard me say, shit or whatever, she didn't lose her mind. But that word made her go, wait, what did you just say?
Right.
And
Yeah.
honestly, it could be that I attach like such an emotion to, not even the word itself. But even now, at my age, it's still like I use it. I can't remember even in my highest anger, and I do normally curse in Spanish, believe it or not. Even though I'm fully indoctrinated in the whole English lifestyle, I still curse in Spanish. If I saw my toe, maldito, it comes out. So even in my highest anger, I've never said that word to anybody. Even
Wow.
just saying it right now, I can't remember the last time I said it out loud.
Wow.
Uh,
Well, and yeah, and there's Spanish, like French, has multiple ways to say you,
yeah,
depending if it's a person or a group or men or women or formal or informal. Yeah. So it's you learn a lot with different languages, and it's I think it's a good tool to learn different ways to express yourself in English too. Japanese is intimidating, I think, only because
they're insane.
of the alphabet, the kanjis. There's so many of them, and I talked years ago to an actor who he's from here, but he lives there. He considers himself Japanese now. He's the whitest guy in the world, but he considers himself a Japanese person because that's where his soul is. And he's very fluent. He teaches English. If like a celebrity, like last time I talked to him, he's like when Paul McCartney visited Tokyo, they hired him to walk with him to translate for him. It's like, oh, how cool is that? Um, but he said, the kanjis there's so many of them that, you can be a Japanese person. I'm a businessman, and you hand your card to another businessman who's Japanese, and you may have to tell them what it says because they can't read your name because they don't know all the kanjis because there's hundreds of them. So they don't know their whole alphabet. They only know the most commonly used ones. I'm like, Jesus, that's crazy. But he said the alphabet is intimidating to a Westerner, plus reading right to left and, backwards. Um, what we call backwards is, our prejudice. Um, but the language itself is very simple. He said there's no irregular verbs. All the verbs end in mas, and you want to make them negative. It's masen. Wakarimas is I understand. Wakarimasen is I don't understand. He's like, they all work that way. Every verb. There's no exceptions. So once you learn that, it's just a matter of learning the verbs. You don't, and English is just such a conglomerate of other languages that there's so many exceptions to all of our rules that it's actually a much harder language to learn from the ground up than Japanese is. But we don't see it that way because it's easy for us because we grew up with it. So it's all perspective. But yeah, languages I'm going to have to remember that word. I thought I had heard every Spanish. You taught me something. Working in prisons for 25 years, I thought I had heard every Spanish and been called most of them, every Spanish curse word there was. So that's a good one to know. I probably got called that and just didn't hear it or understand it.
Oh no, you probably didn't get called that for a reason. I'm telling you, it's another one, especially because I think that, well, I don't want to speak for everybody because you know how people. I'm gonna get an email saying, "Well, I am from South America and I don't believe this way," but I feel like a lot of a lot of Spanish countries are very tied into spirituality and kind of like that whole divinity type
Oh
of
yeah,
aspect. Not painting with a huge broad brush. I'm just speaking from my experiences. Almost every family I've ever met that has a Latin background or South American Spanish background, however you want to say it, all have the same type of like a thing. And I thought also really is like a, it's almost like a curse, you know. It's like especially with like Dominicans, you know, like that whole voodoo thing, it actually plays into the plot that I'm really excited about. I want to talk to you about later, really well. And it's actually part of like the driving. I mean, now that I think about it, I really gotta thank my mom for putting that in me. Now that I think about it, that's probably part of the reason I'm so excited for this plot. That's part subconsciously brewing in me, because it really is like it's like a, you know, it's a weighted thing. It's like, no, I really can't even think of a translation. But going into the whole thing about language, you know what's another interesting thing? Every language, well, I can't say every language, almost every language that I've have like friends with that I've spoken to, they all have a bon appetit. They all have a thing that they say to a person to start the meal, and it almost all of them translate into "I hope that your food like does well for you."
Yeah.
I know it's like a weird like translation when you say it to English, but literally that's like what most of them translate into you. For Spanish, it's bien aprocho or bien aprecio, like depending on how you like say it. Bien provecho, which is same thing, and then French is bon appetit, obviously. I can't remember the other languages because, you know, whatever. What do you want from me? I'm not Rosetta Stone, but but there's a lot of examples for it. But one thing that kind of strikes me is that English really doesn't have one. Best one for English is what? Well, honestly, English is bon appetit. Like I've heard that. Or there's man, what's the English one? What do people say?
The,
It doesn't even translate into the same way. It just kind of goes like, hey, you know,
yeah.
good luck, fucko. Hope it's good.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Don't choke on this.
Exactly. It's like something like,
Yeah.
and again, just knowing how language is and how it's developed, it's odd that English doesn't. But then when you consider how, it's interesting. The same thing that you said about the Japanese language and like the you know, all the gonshis that they have is really interesting because it's basically denoting the fact that their base is more complex, but then when you understand it, it's more simple. It's almost like algebra when you know, not to get like too nerdy here, but when you understand the lengths you have to go in algebra to solve the same things that you can solve in calculus, it's like why even ever not use calculus? But the
Right.
reason why is that like there you have to know more of an understanding of math to begin with to understand calculus.
Yeah.
So it's the kind of the catch 22, which I think is kind of the thing of what how Japanese is, but then English. I mean, the news is spoken, I believe, at what, an eighth grade reading level.
Something like that.
The
Yeah.
news, meaning like the news that adults like listen to, and it's like framed for adults, and all these things are transcribed and written to an eighth degree level. Even us do not have a great grasp of our language. Russia, I was
Yeah.
actually just reading about this. Supposedly, Russia is such a like weird language that um babies, like when people learn the language, they themselves aren't fluent in their language until 11. In English, that happens around
Wow.
4.
Yeah.
Isn't that something? Spanish is around same thing, 4 5. Russian 11, meaning like that's the only
Wow.
language you know. You learn it from a baby, and you don't become fluent in it, fluent in your own language, your own native language until 11. And
That is
obviously that's a
interesting.
average. Obviously, I'm not. You know, there's gonna be people emailing me. Well, my son learned that at 8. Cool,
Yeah.
but I'm sure there's somebody
Yeah.
learned it at 13. So leave me alone.
That's really wild. Yeah. I did not know that.
So
It's
everything,
interesting.
so everything really is like that. I mean, language is such a, because it's so tied into it's so tied into history. Really think about why English would be one of the most highly spoken languages. Is it because of colonialism? Is it because the country called England, where the language originated from, literally went around to every other country and was like, "Hey, what's up? Oh, nice stuff." Boom.
Yeah.
Maybe that's
Here,
why.
meet
It's
our warships.
yeah. Is Spanish the second? Well, actually, it used to be the first most spoken language. Is that because they do the same thing? You know, like things that are like obvious. Same thing. Another thing that has gotten into me, and I feel like I'm really gonna get some emails over this one, but whatever. Is religion? Isn't it odd that Europe is, I mean, polluted with churches? I mean, they have churches in every corner, and every church is fire. They have beautiful stone masonry. They have stained glass windows. Some of them, a lot of them have like gold, real gold accents, and and they're popular. And the Vatican is made out of like full gold. It is gold.
Oh yeah.
The Vatican is unreal. Turn that eye to other religions, temples of worship. How
Yeah.
many of them are littered with gold? How
Not many.
many of them have beautiful stone masonry and benches and no, what are they called? Pylons, pyres, right? Like the
I,
benches that
yeah,
people,
something like that.
I
I
think
can't
they're called
remember.
pyres. Um, made out of like beautiful mahogany and oak and all these crazy things.
Oh yeah.
Do other religions have that? No. Now, do a little math on that. Why would that be? Is it because the Catholics waged a war on literally every other religion for 781 years?
Yeah. Well,
Like
and
all those things are so interesting to me. How deeply tied everything that we take as like such a surface level is so tied into rooted into history and even language.
oh yeah, and with religions too, a lot of it is your philosophy, your point of view. If you're a pagan, church is out in the woods. You know, your ceremonial robes or your skin. Um, I mean, painting all pagans with a broad brush. Technically, I think Hindus being polytheistic are probably considered pagans too, and it's different. But yeah, I mean, in the East, you have gorgeous temples. Um, and same thing in the West. Yeah, my wife was an exchange student in Peru when she was 16, which would have been, let me age her, 1982. And she remembers her host family taking her to the local, of course, Catholic church. Um, and there were people on the steps of the church begging for food, and the walls of the church inside were made of gold, not painted gold, made of gold.
Mm-hmm.
Like, well, I think if Jesus were around, he'd sell the gold and feed everybody, but that's just me. But um, I think it's because religion is seen in the West as a method of instruction. Because if you've got some guy who's God, I've completely lost my ability to speak. Some guy who's like living in a rundown apartment or a shabby place, doesn't really have much in the way of material possessions. He's not going to walk into a shabby, rundown looking church because the church took all their donations and all their resources and gave it to the poor. He's like, well, I live in a crappy house. Why do I want to go into one? You know, if he sees an impressive building, okay, this is it. It automatically, in a material, unconscious way, I think, communicates that this is a way you can elevate yourself. Come and let us teach you how you can be more.
Hmm.
And I think that's the reason for that. And also the selfish and vain kind of look that, we're going to show you how much we love God more than you do, because look, we spent all the village's money on the window we just put in the church rather than fixing the road that everyone has to drive on. I think that's part of it too. It's like the old George Carlin joke, people go to church to compare clothing. It's making a statement to not about yourself and your congregation and your like-minded fellow citizens to others. You know, if the Protestant church is 3 stories high, we're the Catholics. You know what? Ours has to be taller. Our tower, our crucifix at the top has to be bigger, because our God's the correct one, and we love Him more, and we will sacrifice more. So it becomes a external thing, whereas other religions, it's more of an internal thing. If you're going to a shaman for help in whatever it is you need, to be cured, to communicate with someone dead or something, the more naked and covered in dirt and raggedy the shaman looks, the more you're gonna be like, okay, this is my guy. A shaman in a 3-piece suit, that's a con man. But this is a guy who's going to dig a hole and bury himself in it and starve and hallucinate until he gets an answer from my dead father on whatever. It's all a matter of, I think, your perspective and what you see the function of your religion and what your belief system is. It's weird. It's interesting what people will believe. I'm not religious myself, but I do kind of study religions as a hobby because it's fascinating to me what people will choose to believe.
Oh, likewise. And honestly, you made a really good point because it definitely you just definitely kind of shifted and brought that to light because I would have never really considered the I guess the positive side of it because you do make a really good point. You wouldn't think of a place of worship if it wasn't elevated. So that is a really good point. Honestly, that's really going to help me out in some other stuff I'm going to write about. So it's
Not in
definitely
the
something to think
West,
about.
not in the West. In other parts of the world, where's the most sacred place in our community? Well, that big rock over there. If you sit there and you just pray and look at the sky, you'll get what you need. So it's different.
No, but it's still interesting thought because I remember I was very fortunate. I saw the Vatican when I was young. I think at like 13.
Wow.
And at the time it was I mean I went to like a Catholic I had like a very Catholic upbringing and I believe I was just about to go into a Catholic school uh and my and obviously this wasn't the purpose for the trip but I feel like my mom had like a hidden reservation that this was like all right this was really going to strengthen my relationship with like the religion and whatnot and I'm telling you it did the exact opposite if anything. I remember walking by St. Peter's tomb or whatnot
Mhm.
and everyone was just like weeping and losing their mind and even my mom was like, oh, you don't feel anything? And I'm like, no, all I know is that on the way here we passed through how many people begging on the streets and like like so skinny that like you know it doesn't even fit in your head. It's just like how no offense but how are you not dead? Like I can see your ribs, like it's unreal. I can see your heart pounding in your chest right now. It's like cartoon level.
Yeah.
And then you walk in and I'm not kidding you, like you think that that church had like was lined with gold. The Vatican is gold.
Mhm.
Gold. I mean gold everywhere. Everywhere your eye can fit, there's gold. Gold everywhere. The Sistine Chapel has like gold, it's gold woven. Like the
Yeah.
entire thing is gold. Like all that did was more kind of teach me of like I guess like the group think and like the collective like consciousness. Cause it's like I feel that my mom and everyone else was only saying they felt something because they wanted to feel something. Whereas I went there just completely like I wasn't opposed to the idea, but I just went there thinking like, all right, well, we'll find out, and didn't get anything. Then again,
Yeah.
on the same note, because I could be ignorant, and I most likely am, but it could be that kind of the quote that was said in the Da Vinci Code, which I loved. Dan Brown had like his amazing mind when it comes to this type of religious speak.
Good book. Yeah.
Phenomenal. And he said that religion was not a gift bestowed onto me. No, religion is a gift not bestowed onto me. And I think that often because I do think that religion really helps people in a certain way, but I just don't think that the way I think about things that really fits or organized religion in any way. I think we all have a religion, a personal religion that we kind of like follow by, and an experiential religion. The color of our glasses, like the way that we view our world, the shade in which we view things, and our perception. That is our religion. And I
Yeah.
think everyone has that, but I don't think I'm a huge fan of the organized, the whole thing. We're gonna come every Sunday. You owe me 10% of your paycheck.
Yeah.
All that whole stuff. I think that's a little more of the corruption of man, especially when you think about that the what the Bible was spoken in word for 400 years. Now I don't know if you ever played telephone in middle school, but people tend to mix up words often. So you can only imagine how much was lost in translation over 400 years over three languages, and
Well,
with how much language changes in just 10 years, 100
yeah.
years.
Well, it's interesting. The foundation of Christianity is the four Gospels, and they've pretty much worked out. Scholarship has that the first one I believe was Mark, written probably at the earliest around 70 A.D. So at least a generation after the fact, and the other three are kind of rewrites and expansions of that one. But the original, if it is Mark, I believe it is. The original one ends with the tomb being discovered empty. There's no doubting Thomas. There's no ascension afterwards. None of that none of the resurrection stuff. It's only implied that he's resurrected. Um, that all the rest of that stuff was added later. Council of Nicaea did it quite a bit, but Yeah, it's interesting what people believe and what they will do. It's God, I was thinking of something and I've lost it. This happens a lot when you're old. But Lenny Bruce had a great quote. He said, "Every day, more and more people are leaving the church and going back to God." Um, your point about organized religion, I think everyone has a sense of spirituality. We all have personal experience of transcendent things and feelings and experiences, but we don't translate that into a formal dogma and a political organization, shall we say. And people doing, as you said, people derive benefit from it. At the risk of alienating potential buyers of my book, available on Amazon.com.
Do a whole little spin.
I personally feel that religion does more harm than good. I think it's the main source of ignorance and hatred in the world. It does do good things, but there's also such a thing as being the nicest guy in prison. It doesn't. The hospitals and the charity work are wonderful, but very often, charity work and missionary work are part of a effort to proselytize and convert. There's another agenda there. I think most people are fairly decent. They want to be good, but as Orwell said, not completely good and not all of the time. But I don't think we need religion anymore. I think religion was our first attempt at science, at understanding the world, and until we learned better, it worked, I guess. Why is everyone sick? It must be a curse from the other tribe. It must be a witch. It must be a demon. We've upset God somehow. We need to kill some kids to make him happy, or whatever. And then when you find out, well, there's bacteria. Maybe we all shouldn't have drank out of that pond when we got thirsty, and now we're all, you know what I mean? You learn more. Why does the moon travel through the sky at night? Because of the deity who's watching us. No, actually, you learn. The more we learn, and science still has a lot more they don't know, but the more they learn, the more it gives us better and more rational explanations for our existence and the circumstances of it. Will it ever explain everything? I don't know. Maybe it will, maybe it won't. But I think it's possible to have spirituality and morality. And I consider myself a humanist. You read people like Bertrand Russell. There's a scientific basis for being a moral, ethical person. And it's kind of, I think, part of every religion. The golden rule, or the rule of three, as the pagans say, or karma, or what goes around comes around. You reap what you sow. Or as they put it in physics, for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. I'm not going to lie to you, cheat you, steal from you, harm you, because I don't want you to do that to me. And there will be negative consequences for me if I do that. There's a better way I can interact with you. This ties into evolution too. There was a Russian scientist named Peter Kropotkin whose book should be taught in every school in the world, and no one's ever heard of him. He wrote a book called Mutual Aid, long out of print, but you can find it sometimes. He was a student of Darwin. When Darwin came out with the theory of evolution, he's like, okay, he started exploring this. He studied everything from insect colonies to plants to animals to tribes in Siberia, and he found the common thread among them is that those living species whose members cooperate with one another to achieve common goals that benefit everyone are those fittest to survive. So this kind of social Darwinistic idea we have in the West, where if you're not the top dog, the view never changes, and he who dies with the most toys wins. I've got to be the alpha, and all this. There's actually, competition is good, but it's antithetical to evolution. The wolves that hunt in a pack together will eat better and more often than the wolves who hunt alone. The ants who build a colony, the bees who create a hive together, are more likely to reproduce and survive into the future than bees who don't. Plants who nourish each other, tribesmen who work together to build protection from the weather, versus every man for himself, who, if you die, you die. mutual aid and cooperation actually makes you more fit to survive. It's a selfish kind of reason for being a good person, but it's scientifically sound. And that's the way we should teach evolution. But we don't, because it's not American. We like our competition because we got to be number one at everything. It makes me crazy. Ambition is overrated. The ambitious people are the ones causing all the trouble. The people with no ambition, they're fine.
Well, that's the kind of interesting dyad, right? Because I mean, and there's a lot of things that I want to like pull apart with what you said there. But the analogy with the Darwinism, I was actually reading an article not too long ago, so I guess this was just perfectly plotted, you know, to for this episode about that the whole idea of fittest to survive was actually in a sense misquoted. So people
Mhm.
take that as like the emphasis being on fittest, meaning like fittest meaning fit. But in
Yeah,
reality, fit meant more like he meant fit as a more even suitable to survive. And that
right.
little, you know, apostrophe, that little asterisk above that word is where your point comes in, where he wasn't saying that the fittest to survive is the guy, you know, with a 12 pack doing the Gohan, you know, doing the Goku push-ups and doing all these crazy things, running a mile in
Right.
you know, 2 minutes 3 seconds. It's the people that understand, like, all right, if I run for X amount of distance and I pass the baton to you, and then you pass the baton to them, and then you to her, and then her to him, then we can do this faster and more effectively. That is actually what he meant by fitness to survive. It's understanding that survival is the key, and the most effective way to survive, the people that find the most effective and efficient way to survive are who are the ones that are eventually going to survive more.
Yeah, exactly. That guy, if he's a good guy and uses his physical attributes and strengths to help everybody, you know, hey, Tom, can you help me move this? Yeah, sure. He comes along and helps you. Everybody likes Tom. If Tom is a selfish jerk who bullies and oppresses other people, then he's not going to survive because he's got to sleep sometime. But if he's a good guy and he has all those possible attributes, yeah, he's going to be, everyone's going to like him. Women are going to find him more attractive. He's going to reproduce more, have more children, and his DNA and his family are going more likely and therefore more fit to survive into the future. So yeah, it's the definition of fittest that matters, and we see it in kind of a shallow, childish way as a society. We need to better ourselves. Everyone should read Kropotkin.
Well, I'm definitely gonna have to now. And side note, talking about books that need to be read, Israfel Rising and Israfel Fallen out now. Amazon, pick it up. But onto
Yes.
what you were talking about with the whole religion and the science thing. I really believed in the exact same way until I started kind of having my slight doubts, and how I've kind of evolved my thinking about it is I think that that need for humans is a systematic problem. Like even if we got rid of religion, and even if we had even clearer science, then we would just simply turn whatever it is into a religion. There's a great book called Machine of Gods. I might be butchering the title. It's been remade into like some very old movies. It's a very old book. It's a sci-fi about these people that live underground, like in underground tunnels and infrastructures subterranean, because like you know the surface of the earth is XYZ. And what happens that these people all revolve around this machine that you know does everything for them. And over generations the technology advances so high, and the people start uh forgetting on how the actual thing is run and made, that eventually the technology becomes a religion. So they abolish all idea of like religion in order to make a more peaceful society. But then the technology that got them to that point ends up being the religion anyway. And I think that that concept was really ahead of its time, not only for just the way that technology is actually going to the point that actually might be a possible future for us, but
Yeah.
it's also that idea that really it's a systematic problem, like the human brain as it is now. And I'm not saying that we can't evolve past the point, but I think the moment that we started doing cave etchings in caves in France and just started going down that path, we introduced this idea of not being able to let go of certain principles. And just as you said, it was a survival tactic. At the time, in the beginning, it was the fittest idea to be able to constrict your. It's kind of like the same reason that you put blindfolds on a horse. It's like in order to finish the race, you need to make sure there's no other distractions.
Yeah.
So in the beginning, psychologically, it makes sense to have those type of ideas that things need to be so finite. And if a person, if your tribe of people are in the woods and this one person goes like, hey, yeah, I want to go and hang out in the trees, but hanging out in the trees is going to be to death, that there's a reason to get that angry and be like, nah, listen, you know, unless you want a portion of us to die for you being stupid, you got to not do that. But we're way past that level now. And that's obviously not like a needed thing anymore. But we still
Yeah.
have that, like regressive thing that it needs to be like, I don't know. Like it just needs to be like, for whatever reason, when we feel that we found a route of survival that is very good, and right now we're on a very psychological level of survival. When we were fighting for weather and fighting for food, just the actual act of living was kind of like the sense for you to keep going. But now we need self-help and we need therapists and we need XYZ. So like survival has become more psychological. So just the way that everything develops, and uh, it's almost exhaustive. But when we feel that we've gotten to that level, when we feel like we found a psychological method of survival, like, nah, if you listen to this God and what we're saying over here, this is going to lead to a good life, I promise you. And not only that, but the thing you're most scared of about dying, trust me, we got an answer for that too. Don't even worry about it. So that need for having the answers that fit the most in your head, for whatever reason, we just have that. I don't even know what to call it. We just have that feeling to want to make sure that everyone else feels that way too. And I think in that sense, we need to kind of step back and realize that it's not all evil. I mean, at the root of it is that the person feels so good about how they're feeling, they want to throw that feeling onto you. But it's the way that we get so emotional attached to those ideas, and when we feel that
Yeah.
a person get like a that we feel that somehow a person believing in something else puts into question your thing. And I think that's what really messes with people, that if what they believe isn't right, then what is right? And that's what really gets people so impassioned and really
Yeah.
that's when we start wars
Well,
and doing some crazy stuff.
well, that applies to politics and other things too. Yeah, I don't think we'll ever be free of religion as a species. Freud didn't think so either. Freud said we're likely to have religion as long as we're afraid of death. So that's probably going to be around for a while. And I'm not anti what I would call supernatural or superstitious beliefs, but um, I'm I'm anti what you're talking about, forcing them on other people or asking for special privileges or exceptions for it. I'm against that. I don't think it should be taught in schools. It should be a home thing. James Madison didn't even think there should be chaplains in the prisons or in the military that were paid by tax dollars. He thought if they want to volunteer, that's fine, but no tax money should go for that because we're a secular democracy. Um, John Adams was, and Franklin and Jefferson, most obviously, but they were more deists than anything. And I understand deism. If you look at the cosmos and say, well, it's such an intricate machinery of how everything is balanced in nature. Surely there had to be some kind of organizing intelligence behind all this. I can't argue against that. I can see where that's a strong argument and a belief, but it's a huge leap to go from that to, and I know what this intelligence wants and how they want you to dress and eat and wear and who you can sleep with and what position and how much of your income should go to the organization I happen to represent and how you should live your life. And you can't make that leap logically. It's literally a leap of faith. And I don't know that faith is a good thing. Believing in saying that you're a person of faith is saying that you will believe extraordinary claims with no evidence at all, which is fine. Be the person you want to be, but I don't see that as a good thing. I think if you make an extraordinary claim, you need extraordinary evidence for it. For example, we're friends. If I told you, hey, I went hiking in the woods and I saw a family of raccoons just sitting down by the pond drinking, it was really cool, you'd probably believe me. There's no motivation for me to lie about something so innocuous. You know that raccoons exist and that they drink water and that you've seen them yourself. If I said, hey, I was walking in the woods and I saw a Bigfoot sitting down drinking out of the pond, and then he walked across the water and got into the spaceship and it just vanished. And you've known me all our relationship to be a sane, rational, honest person. You're probably going to be nice and say, oh, well, that's incredible. That's amazing. You should tell someone, or maybe you should not tell anyone so you don't lose your job. You would not, I suspect, believe me. You might believe that I believe I saw it. Maybe I, swallowed the wrong mushroom along the trail. But even if you believe that I'm being sincere and not just joking with you or delusional, or I've hit my head somewhere along the way, even if you think that I believe this to be true and I'm being honest with you, you're not going to believe me. Now, if I had video, of course, now there's deep fakes, even video is brought into question. But if I had video, or if I took you out, I showed you, come on, we'll go and I'll take you, and you see burn marks on the grass where the ship was there and footprints, you still probably won't believe me, but you might think, maybe he's not crazy. Maybe someone hoaxed him or pranked him, or something happened here that he misunderstood. You're not going to believe that unless you see that for yourself, and maybe not even then, because it's an extraordinary claim about something we have no evidence actually exists. And I mean, unless you're a Bigfoot UFO believer to begin with, you're going to require evidence to believe in this claim. The raccoons, no, I don't need to show you a picture of the raccoons. You're going to believe my story. Why wouldn't you? It's a mundane event that we understand takes place in the world, because we all know there's such a thing as raccoons. You see, I mean, religion makes incredible claims for itself with no evidence at all. And there are moral lessons and teachings for sure, but there's a lot of stuff that is not so good. I don't remember who said it, but someone once said there's no such thing as an atheist suicide bomber. If you want to get someone else also, and I've forgotten who, said that in the normal working of the universe, good people will do the best they can in life. Bad people will do selfish, bad things to benefit themselves. But if you want to get good people to do terrible things, religion is what you need. If you can convince someone that God is on their side and really wants this other person dead for whatever reason, heretic, infidel, blasphemy, whatever, you can convince a morally good person to kill another person whom they have no personal grievance with, if they believe it's God's will, and they'll believe they're acting in perfect accordance with the will of God. Even something as common as circumcision. One point of view would be it's genital mutilation of a child. Another point of view is this is what God's law requires. Not saying one or the other is correct, but it's kind of a supernatural way of thinking that can and has been misused by very earthly human forces to achieve political and other ends. So I think, back to my original point, it is the main source of hatred and ignorance in the world. You could very easily solve I don't want to minimize it, not terribly easily, but what you have in Israel and Palestine is essentially a real estate issue. You've got two groups of people both laying claim to ownership of a piece of property because of historical and customs and customary factors and scriptures and books they consider to be sacred. And of course they don't agree. So because they don't agree, and because each side believes they have God on their side, we're going to have and have had decades of hatred, discrimination, oppression, misery, violence, and death. And no one can get this problem solved. This has been, what, since 1948? If you take religion out of the equation, it seems likely to me that the UN or someone else, a third party or parties, could broker some sort of arrangement where, okay, you know what? This is your part. This is their part. This is the border. You all just agree to disagree and leave each other alone, and we'll all be good. And I dare say things would be better. But adding religion to the equation, once any group decides that we're God's people and you're not, it leads to bad things. And I think, as we said, I think it's part of the childhood of our species that we embraced this and needed it. I think as a species, I think it's fair to say we're in our adolescence now. I don't think we've fully matured, but we've moved away from some of that. We've gained more knowledge and insight. And the question is, since we're probably always going to fear death, and there will always be transcendent and numinous experiences that we have, will we move past this to such an extent that we're not governed by it and won't do terrible things to each other because of it, and can see it for what it is and keep it in a proper perspective so that it's more beneficial than not? Or will a messianic death cult get a hold of an apocalyptic weapon first and all this will be irrelevant? Don't know.
I mean, maybe. You never know.
We'll see. What any of that has to do with writing, I don't know. I digress. I'm the
No,
king of digression.
no. I think that all this is fascinating. Specifically, the whole thing that you were talking about, the whole nature of the universe and how it applies to technology. What I think is the whole thing of what religion is, that it's like basically trying to formulate an idea of what the beyond is into minds that really can't process that type of information. However, what fascinates me the most about specifically computers, why I have such a fascination with computers, is the more we understand about computing and coding and the creation of artificial worlds and artificial reality, it seems to answer more and more questions about the nature of our reality.
Yeah, this could be a simulation. There's so much evidence for that.
Yes, and one of the most interesting things that somebody said that really was such an aha moment to me. Of course, and the grain of salt, but especially as an author, which is why all this is so important to writing, is it immediately made me think of how, I mean, like, I'll be honest with you, without getting too much, without spoiling too much of my own writing, it is a very integral philosophy throughout the multiverse that I've been writing. But what this person was saying was that even something as time distortion due to gravitational effects, like you've seen the movie Interstellar, the whole idea that when the closer they are to the black
Yeah,
hole, the faster time is going and whatnot, respectively. Which, by the way, I thought was a phenomenal
right.
scene where they go back to the guy and he's
Great.
like, "Dude, I've been staring at the black hole for fucking like it's been years. I'm like about to die." Phenomenal scene.
Yeah,
But
great movie.
phenomenal. But what somebody was saying is that kind of an evidence to the idea of the simulation was that even like that could be described and could be explained by resolution. So when a computer is rendering a specifically very high amount of data, what happens to it? It starts to lag because it's just rendering a lot of information. Now, if you take something as gravitationally significant as a black hole and you equate that to resolution, it now makes sense. That point within the simulation requires a lot of data in order to create. It's a resolution dump. So the closer you are to it, the more processing is required in order to sustain your positional location. And the deeper you go in, and that whole like it's like the Dolby effect. The closer you are, more intensive. The farther you are, it's less intensive. And even just simple things of the further that we go down, have you ever heard of micro machines? like
Mhm.
plant,
Yeah.
like have you ever seen the pictures of what photosynthesis looks like? It looks like a machine. It looks
Yeah.
like a little machine made by cells and microbia and all whatever. I'm not a biologist. You understand what I'm saying? It's these and they're elaborate. I mean, it literally, if you were to take, I'm surprised I haven't seen like a Reddit post or some type of artist rendition of it. But if you take a picture of that thing and you put it side by an industrial machine from the 80s, like of metalworking, they're they equate.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna assume that whoever made that machine wasn't using that as a reference. For whatever reason, there seems to be a basis of how things work. Even a favorite my favorite thing for evolution, because especially as a sci-fi writer, I love postulating how alien species would look like and how environments would check the biology of a different people and different species and all those different things. But one of the things that I love so much and kind of explain kind of the human physique and why that seems to be kind of like a going rate in so much like sci-fi is that it's not just out of laziness from the creator that they decided to make a human with blue skin and weird ears.
Yeah.
But if you put evolutional coding programming is instead of giving a code instead of programming code to a computer that it just executes ideas based on your parameters, you instead give a computer a problem, and you let it come up with its own solutions through however many millions of trial and errors it needs until it's able to find a solution that's as close to a percentile of 100 that they can find. So they design this simulation and they give a computer a task of, all right, with how many joints and bones there are in the human body, we give you that amount of numbers. What is the most effective way of running? So you see the thing, it's like run through simulations, and it's at first doing like a zombie walk, and then like it's for doing a quadrupedal, and then over simulations, bipedal with the arm swing and for counterweight is the most effective way for long distance running. And
Yeah.
that's no matter how many ways you break it down, with that joint level muscle mass gravity, bipedal is the most effective form. So that means that anything that evolves from this planet, unless the planet digresses or progresses in some ways that are completely unfathomable to us right now, we might have a different amount of hair, we might be skinnier, we might be taller, but we will be bipedal. We
Yeah.
will have there's certain basis of creation that just seem to be formulaic. And in that sense, it's really interesting because when you think of that type of thing, it's like, all right, well, if we're defining the idea that this was coded, then there has to be a person that wrote the code. And then that's when you get into the really just interesting things. Or is it more of a thing that it's just an infinite loop where the micro really does have such an effect on the macro? Where one of my favorite things that a professor of mine ever said was he was talking about how chloroplast, when you look at it from a microscope, the way that it's structured is structured the exact same way that galaxy clusters are formed.
Yeah.
Because galaxies also have gravitational, galaxies itself also have gravitational pull, and they pull at one another. So even when
Right.
you zoom out from to see a picture of the universe, even the universe isn't dotted the way that you see the star, the way that you think the stars are, that everything is equally apart.
Right.
There's
Yeah.
galaxy clusters, and they're things like that, and the way that those are formed are equal to the way that chloroplast is formed within plants, and then the way that atoms, electrons, uh, revolve and eclipse around an atom is equal to the gravitational pull of the sun and it's the planets and the satellites around it. And he was just doing like all these comparative things. At the end of it, he said, now, doesn't that make sense to you that what we can consider planets and suns could just be the electrons and the nucleuses for another life, and it just keeps going
Oh,
further up and down forever?
yeah.
And you'll forever, for as much as you want to keep on looking into like a new route, it will just always be this cyclical thing of ending up at the
Yeah.
same place that you started.
Truly infinity. Yeah. This stuff is so much more impressive to think about than, the burning bush.
Man, I'm
Uh,
glad that I actually
it,
just put that reference in a book of
I'll,
mine.
I'll,
I
I'll
just
go out
did.
on that limb. When there was an Islamic writer, and I about wrote about 1,000 years ago, and I've forgotten their name as well because my mind is like a colander. It's actually like a policeman. It's never there when I want it. They said something like, "No, since no one knows anything about the nature of God, those who say they do are just causing trouble." When you think about that infinitely expanding tautology of, our entire cosmos may be a subatomic particle in another existence, and that existence is a subatomic part, and so on and so on. When you think about that, you get some scope of what if there is a God, and in other words, a infinite, eternal, limitlessly powerful intelligence, what such an entity would actually be like, and try to square that with, yes, and they care where you go on Sundays and how you cut your hair and what you eat on what day of the week
And what you
and
do
who
with
you go
your
to bed with
genitalia.
in what position. And yeah, and it's irreconcilable. You realize that so much of what we believe is very likely, I can't speak with certainty because I'm 98% chimpanzee like everyone else who's watching. But you get an idea that, our concept of deities is so infantile and childlike and made sense 2,000 years ago before we knew all this about reality. Made perfect sense. But now that we've seen the big picture, or at least gotten a glimpse that there is a big picture and how big it may be, you can't reconcile that. A thinking person cannot reconcile those two things. You may wish for and long for the comfortable superstitions of your childhood, but when you realize that, no, you know what, as great as we thought that was, as much as we thought that, after we're gone, we continue in some infinite higher way, thinking about what you just talked about, to me, is even more impressive and more positive. When you realize that stars that died to compose the atoms in this hand are probably not the same stars that compose this hand, and both of these hands are being used by a primate that's 98% chimpanzee, you get an idea that all of this and everything that I think I am, whether I'm just brain encoding and chemicals and enzymes, or whether I have a spirit of some kind, which I feel like I do, but maybe that's whatever. If nothing ever really disappears, it just changes form, matter and energy, then that's a far more impressive and I think heartening and comforting thought than the thought that, I'm going to be sitting on a bench with a harp and there'll be angels and there'll be sweet things to eat and I'll never gain weight and I'll see my dead parents again. And as nice as all that is, it's kind of a childish dream when you think about being part of this infinite magisteria of existence that we're starting to get a glimpse of that's really there. To me, that's much more heartening to know that you're part of that. You're going to go where everybody else has gone. We are all kind of subatomic particles in this drop in the ocean together. So we're all related, and what happens to everybody else matters because they're part of me, and you get that whole thing. That's all the spirituality I need. I don't need anything other than that. I don't need a burning bush or a talking snake, not to offend anyone who's watching, but that's where I'm at personally. I defend anyone's right to believe whatever they want, but there's so much more to learn. It's so much more. And look at the pictures from the Hubble telescope, and how can you not be awed to think that you're part of this for a fleeting moment in time? Wow. And we've all got stories to tell, and we can share them with other people. So in fine bookstores everywhere.
Oh my God.
But
Beautiful,
yeah,
beautiful sentiment.
that's the kind of stuff that blows me away. That's a reason not to despair, because it's all good.
Well,
So
my God, I mean, just to shift steam a little bit, to shift polls a little bit, to get back to Israfel's Rising and the Fallen and whatnot. I mean, not that I didn't love all that. My God, I'm just
No, this is a book podcast after
no,
all. Not
no. I mean, that's the weird thing is that like I always feel like I'm always in a weird like mental state, whereas like I feel like sometimes people are like, all right, like kind of going on weird tangents here, but it's like I myself want to hear it. So it's like, you know, there has to be somebody else that agrees with me. That's my logic.
if you look at things that way, if everything's infinite, then everything's equally important. What flavor of jelly I buy at the store is just as important as all that other stuff then, because
Oh my God. Oh
it's
my
all of
God.
equal
Yes.
value. So we can talk about, the font size and the books and the covers and stuff. And there's nothing that's not important or not equally unimportant.
Exactly. I mean, like we said, and the reason I'm taking like so much aback by this and almost stumping me is because so much of what you said are things that I very consciously put into my book. So the burning bush and the whole thing that happens to one of my characters, except that I think I make it as a frozen cactus. But same idea that like the frozen cactus like starts talking to him and they start like developing all these like weird ideas. And the reason I like that so much is because it's the opposite of what you would think. So that whole idea that gets incepted into this character's mind is actually what puts them on the path of the worst thing ever. Because instead of truly growing as a person and like taking life on as like the experiences and like instead of looking for the actual things in his life that he should be that like just like simple math, like all right, this happened and that happened, so we should do this. Instead of doing simple math, he just revolves his entire life, his entire persona on this idea that like, oh no, like I could be nicer to people and do all that stuff and like fit in, or there was that one time that frozen bush told me that I was the man and I was gonna be the guy in shining armor at the end of the story, so that's what I'm gonna pursue.
Yeah.
And his just I don't want to say it's a delve into insanity because the character is very dumb and I kind of like make it that to like on purpose. Well, not dumb as more as pig-headed. It's just the way I developed the character was that if he said, or if you told him that you couldn't open a door by banging your head on it, even though there's a doorknob right there, no key, you just gotta unlock it right there. He will bang his head on that
Yes.
door until an opening appears, and he's just that type of person.
We all know that guy. That's the
Exactly.
thing.
So it's more of just a defiance of just clear things that you shouldn't do, but it's almost admirable because it's just like an unwillingness to quit to the level that it's absurd. Uh, and I think that justifies a lot of what religion is that like he has clear evidence in his life that this is not the route to go, but he blindly just bypasses all of it because he
That's
is so entrapped in an idea that he was
yeah.
born with. Well,
That's
not
that's
even born with, but he feels we're born with because the reason it's so intertwined and emotionally why it's so synced into him is because he feels that this idea is what saved him. He was
yeah.
dying in the desert, and then this frozen bush started talking to him, and then he wakes up again. He's alive. He never once thinks about it. It's like, oh, maybe this person that saved me is where I should put my faith
Yeah.
into. It's this fantastical, this whimsical idea that this was actually all for a purpose. And I think that's mainly what he fixated on. I haven't even written that part of it yet, but just thinking about it like philosophically, how it would be like naturally. I think the character maybe that's where he fixated on the idea that you know he was 14, put in a life or death situation that he thought he was going to die from. Why would
Right.
this be happening to me? And now this
Yeah.
frozen bush is in front of him saying, "This is why it's happening to you." And maybe that's
Yeah.
what he got fixated on.
That's such a human thing. We're all like pattern seeking mammals, which is good and bad.
Yes.
But that's such a human thing. We all know that person who does that. The guy who, you know, his ex cheated on him and lied to him and he took her back and she did it again and then he broke up and now she says she's really changed and he really still loves her and he wants to, and everybody around him go, no, this is wrong, but he loves her and he wants to love her or the idea of what he thinks she is or can be, and so he does it and we're like, oh my god, no, what's wrong with you? But that's so human. So I mean, I can't wait for volume one. Your readers are going to be so able to relate to characters like that. And that was important for me too with my cops. I didn't want, I mean, group of cops chasing a serial killer. Is there more a cliche story ever, no matter how you dress it up? The characters are what matters, and I didn't want a super villain. I didn't want super cops. I didn't want heroes. I wanted normal, complicated people who are capable of heroism sometimes, like we all are. And things don't always go their way. Even in the second book, which the murders starting, the first book takes place over a couple of years. The second book's, there's another body found, and in 8 days, it's all over. So things happen very quickly. Everything gets resolved in 8 days. But it's very much the cops are there doing their job the best they can, working tirelessly on the case. But as in life, we all work and do the best we can, trying to achieve what we want to, working towards our goals. But curveballs keep coming at you, whether your car breaks down, or you break your leg, or your boss quits, or whatever. There's stuff you can't foresee and can't control, and you just have to roll with it. And that's kind of what happens in both books. And I think it's important to keep that in perspective. All your characters are leaves in the wind of whatever's happening in your story. You can have character driven stories, those superheroes or those super villains. And if they're done well, they're great. But for me, it's really important to try to create those multi-dimensional characters so that people who read the books will see people that they know or can relate to in them. They're all terribly human. Even Sully, who's my MC, makes mistakes, far from a perfect person, gets things wrong sometimes, but comes through in the end somehow, and I think is adorable. So that's to me the focus, not necessarily the plot, even though the plot has to make sense and be tight and believable. It's those characters, creating those characters that people love. And that's, I think, any if you think about any book or movie that you love, that's what it's about. You love that character, regardless of the situation. So
Yeah, without a single doubt. It's honestly it's actually one of the things that I've been kind of diagnosing in a lot of the TV shows that I've been really a fan of, where specifically what I'm referring to is Peaky Blinders and Mr. Robot. Two recent shows I've been falling in love with.
Peaky Blinders is great.
Yeah, phenomenal. And one thing that I'm liking, and it's something that I've been kind of jotting down notes and kind of picking up on, is that there's something about creating a character that you once respect, and then just the way that the own character develops, you almost lose respect for the character.
Yeah.
There's something to it when you're almost frustrated for the character, where it's almost like, all right, I get that you have your emotional problems, why can't you let it go? And then the moment you have that thought, you're like, oh, wait a minute, how many emotional baggage am I holding on to that I haven't let go? And it's just, it's that beautiful art that it holds a mirror to the person that's viewing it. And I think that's what true, I mean, it's the reason I love the craft so much, and it's the reason I love thinking about it and talking to people so in depth about it, because there's so many ways of not only portraying how the emotions that you want to portray, but also of the setting. And as you said, the most important thing, I can't remember who, I think it was Mozart, but the notes that you don't play are just important as the notes that you do.
Yeah.
And it's making sure you get those hints, and like getting that. It's also like cooking. You want to make sure that all the flavors hit your tongue at the right moment. You don't want to oversalt it. You don't want to put too much pepper, but just enough that everything cascades.
Yeah.
And you get the full experience and the full body of whatever it is. It's beautiful.
Yeah. You got to know what to add and when, and what not to add and why not to add it. You got to know why you're not playing those notes, or why you're not telling the reader about this thing that's happening. That what's, like Hauer said, what's happening outside the frame.
God, one thing that I want to get into. Let's go ahead and share your social media stuff.
Okay. Yeah. Facebook, Instagram, stevergans.com.
Right here.
The first book, the website is in need of an overhaul. but my webmaster is terribly busy. She's going to get to it when she can. But um, the first book, Israfel Rising, is on Kindle Unlimited, so you can read it for free if you're a member there. If not, if you go to Amazon and click on the cover, you can read the first 3 chapters for free. See if you want to spend $2.99 to buy it. And the second book, Israfel Fallen, like I said, the print book's not available yet. We're working on that, but the ebook is out there for $3.99. That's not going to be on Kindle Unlimited. But so far, so good. Responses have been pretty decent. So
Yeah, just mousing over a couple 5-star reviews over here.
Oh, on Goodreads, yeah, and I think it's on BookBub too. I'm not sure. I think it is. I honestly haven't had time to keep up with it. Checking all the sites, but yeah, and I am giving away a ebook of Israfel Rising tomorrow morning. I posted in Facebook. You know, if I've got a free ebook coming. If anyone wants it, put your name below, and I'll put you on the list and draw someone at random. So if you want to find me on Facebook and add, find that post, add that name to the list. Maybe you get a free ebook tomorrow. But yeah, and I'm very happy with the cover that Anya Khan did for me for the second book. I told her, I said, make it blood red and blood splattered. So she did that. And I think she'll have more fun with the 8 Legs of the Devil because she's going to make me an iridescent spider. She doesn't know that yet if she's watching. That's what she's going to be making for me. She is such a phenomenal artist. I can't wait to see what she does with it. I'm very lucky to have her.
I'm over the moon with the art. It's actually where I'm at with the stage of Allegory of the End. I'm just finishing up all the little graphics now.
Nice.
I have some really cool ones. I'm really I can actually show you the one that I'm working on right now.
Cool.
For a quick second.
Yeah, I'm so ready to read your book.
I actually haven't finished it. Well, I haven't done with the little graphics of it yet, but this is.
Oh wow.
This is for the nanobot shots and the hard light. So what I'm doing is I'm making like fake little adverts. So as you can see, this is kind of one that it's kind of like a brochure that you would get from their museum,
right?
Like the technology and how it's like currently used.
Oh, that is so cool.
So I'm just like finishing up this. I actually have it's actually the tail end of it. This is, what is it? I think this is the 27th one. And I have 3 more. So it's going to tap it off to 30.
Wow. This stuff is so cool. And I love it when stuff like this gets integrated, like when you see artwork and things like this into the text of a book. It makes it a richer experience. It's the kind of stuff I like that I would suck at if I tried it. I know better than to even try, but that is so cool. I love good science fiction. Like I said, I'm a fan of Philip K. Dick and Harlan Ellison. My favorite sci-fi book, probably Solaris, by Lem. It's just such a great genre. There's so much you can do with it.
Are you seeing this?
Wow. Oh, that is cool.
So yeah, so this is a finished one. So this is a newspaper kind of like ad, right? Like Lakes Tip Gazette. And this is a realty ad for Sector 2. And at the bottom, there's a job description for this is actually where Zayco works in the book.
I love this stuff. You got the animals there. That just immerses you. How do you not get drawn into this world? That is so clever.
I even just made that currency too. I think I made that like last week. I think before I just had like a regular just like acronym, but then I realized that I think people are kind of crap me out for that.
Well, I think this right here, this is your first t-shirt. This is your first merchandise tie-in here. I mean, who wouldn't want that t-shirt? Who's read the book? People ask, what's that about? Oh, read the book.
Oh, my favorite, honestly, God, I hate to do this. Feels like I'm like seeking approval here, but just I love like you kind of like get the point that like it's not like necessarily like a merch thing or like anything like that, but really something that kind of like brings you into the book and just like it immerses you.
Totally. I mean, this brings the world to life because it's so relatable to what we see everywhere around us.
All right, so this is one that. So this is actually after my niece. Can you see this one? Do I have to change the screen again?
You might have to change the screen.
All right, 1 second.
This stuff is so cool.
Are you seeing this now?
Oh, okay. Yeah, the all new Modiste X homestyle cooking at Cam's Diner. See, that is so cool.
So this thing, I actually named it after my niece.
Nice.
Yeah.
I do that too. Most of my minor characters are the names of people I know. It's just a little in joke between all of us. That is cool.
Yeah, I'm over the moon because exactly what you said. I just can't wait to actually see the beast formed and just be exactly what you said. Like my favorite thing is I don't know if even you notice it, but you light up at least 20-30% more than you are natively every time you even hold up your book. Like even when you just go like that, you light up.
Oh, wow. Like
I can't.
this?
Yeah.
It's like on off switch.
Yeah.
It's a cool
I'm
thing.
gonna have it by like 70%. Just me holding the book. I'm gonna be like, oh, look. I can't.
Yeah.
If it sells 3 copies, I could care less. It's just like holding it at this
Yeah.
point,
It's a great thing.
knowing that I created. It's
Yeah.
like holding a baby.
It is your baby, for all its imperfections, it is your creation. Yeah. You started with an idea with blank paper or a blank screen and produced something, and it's a great feeling. It's very rewarding.
Oh my god, that's why I cannot wait to. I want to explain this idea to you. Not only because, really, because there's a couple things that I want to like ask your opinion about, honestly. And I think you'd be a great person to ask too. So I just can't wait to get into that. But I'm gonna do that after the recording. So we kind of like focus it
Okay.
all on marketing and whatnot for the. Want to make sure as much people as possible. I mean, I can't offer that much of a, you know, I don't know if I'm at 1 million viewers yet, but for as the people listening, I cannot urge you enough. Amazon, Goodreads, steveargans.com. That's STEVERGANS.com.
Yeah.
I had to double check. Wait, did I misspell that? No, I
Right.
didn't.
It's an art.
SteveRgans.com. Follow him on Instagram, Facebook. Make sure to drop a review on Goodreads. We already went, why are you going to go ahead and spend $30 on the new whatever the heck and then leave a comment on that when you can spend, $4 or $5 indie published?
Three
You know
three
what I'm saying?
dollars.
You drop
Or,
three.
well, print version $10. That's
You,
all.
you drop $3. You leave a review. I guarantee you drop a review for Stephen King. Not even Stephen King's third down assistant. All right, like meaning his assistant. She's not even gonna read that shit. If you leave a comment for Steve Argans, listen, Steve Argans is reading it the moment you drop it.
Oh yeah.
Flowers are being sent to your
Check
house
it every day.
Exactly. Like this is this is amazing. This is what we live for. Not necessarily saying that we live for the attention and the recognition, but just it's nice.
It's communication.
It's
It's
nice
nice
communication.
to, if you're a cook and you bake something, you want people to eat it and tell you, hey, this is pretty good.
At least a
Or it
smile,
needs more
slap on the back.
salt.
Hey, fucko, good
Yeah.
job.
Needs more salt. A little too dry. Okay, I'll get it right next time. But yeah, I'm actually thinking of like with one of the future books, but maybe after Eight Legs, like doing some sort of contest where people can like name a character or can put themselves in a scene like with Sully as a character or something like that. Get people involved in something like that. Just as a marketing thing, I think that might be cool.
I like that a lot.
That, and I talk about t-shirts. I'm probably most proud of the fact that there's a lot of humor in both books, and most of it inappropriate and not meant for children. But I believe I created at least one new curse word in English, which I think is a major accomplishment. When's the last time a new one was created? But Sully refers to things that are really bad in a huge way as being fucktacular. And I'm seriously thinking about like putting fucktacular on like tumblers and stickers and t-shirts, and probably sell more of those than I will of the book. But they can put it in my obituary, creator of the word fucktacular.
You know what? I have an idea
Nothing else.
that I've actually I thought I was gonna keep it close to the chest for my release, but since you're such a valid friend, and I know it's gonna be recorded anyway, but whatever, I'm not gonna hit record. I'm already saying this. Uh, there's an idea that I came up with, and it's all along your idea. Have you seen like the owl crates that people make? That it's like
Yeah,
they'll make like a book and like add a whole bunch of things. So I'm
yeah.
thinking of the same way that like on our website, because Amazon is pretty strict about where you can put the IP up, but they do allow you to put like signed copies up that you can sell it yourself on the book because it's
Mhm.
technically a different product. So
Yeah.
what I'm thinking of doing, and it's you're more than welcome to take the idea, is making my own owl crate, like a special one for like the book, and that you make things specific for the book. So one thing that
Oh,
I
that's
thought
cool.
so one thing that I thought would be interesting is that specifically for all the graphics that I have in there, it would be a travesty to not like be able to have like a magnifying glass to be able to look at the details, because they are detailed works, even the little
Yeah.
microscopic things. And I'm paid enough for it to make sure, believe me. So uh what I was thinking of doing is to adding like a magnifying glass, adding like just like these little bookmarks. Actually, I started doing these after our episode, but I make like laser engraved metal
Oh,
bookmarks.
nice. That's cool.
Yeah, there's actually a graphic. This is actually, I don't want to take it down because, oh, I can. This is actually a character within the book.
Oh, wow. That is so cool.
So what I was thinking of doing is adding just a whole bunch of things like that, a signed copy, the whole shebang, and
Yeah,
then releasing it as like a package, like an owl crate.
that's a great idea.
And again, I'm not, who am I? I don't even have a debut out. But if you want to take the idea, all yours.
That's cool. I've got bunches of ideas for merchandise. I thought, I could do Shopify or something, but like,
Exactly, and you can put it all into
Ashwood
a crate.
PD t-shirts, since I created this fictional city or whatever.
Exactly.
Um,
And what I'm thinking is that a lot of things in marketing right now aren't even necessarily you doing marketing, but like leaving the trails for other people to do marketing for you. Like that's where the high note of like marketing is. And I think
yeah,
something like I'll create, like even if you just get like even people that just get like a coffee mug or whatever, they don't seem to really post about that coffee mug like they will. They just get it and whatever. But almost every owl crate that I've ever well, every owl crate, like what do I know? But I've seen a lot of owl crate posts. I think if you had like an actual package like that, I think that's a lot more like Instagrammable, especially if you like really make it your own. You make the box black with like the city like a silhouette on the box that you like have like an ink print of or whatever. Of course, I think the come up which the initial cost might be a little high, but I think it's
yeah.
just just a cool idea anyway. Definitely, it's
It is
definitely
a neat.
something that I definitely want to do as like kind of as like a major like package of the whole book. Seems like
I
a
could get
cool
really
idea.
gruesome with mine, like put the one victim's teeth that Israfel pulled out of. I could, you have a little bag of your teeth or
Dude,
something.
yeah.
I
And it
get
costs
really gruesome with it.
yeah, and if you want to talk about marketing, it doesn't even necessarily have to be that crazy much. I mean, you buy like some fake teeth and you put them in a jar, you maybe like dip them in like in blood or what, and
Yeah,
some paint and
spray them with
whatever,
some seafood. Yeah,
cornstarch, just whatever it may be, and then like you shake it up. The value of that to you is like $1 and change. You round it up to like $4 or $5 in like value, and then like you
yeah.
put it all in like a package, sell it for like $35, which again, high
There
note.
you go.
But again, it's like you're not buying for a book, you're paying for like a nice fat package
Right.
that comes with a whole bunch
Yeah.
of like little things or whatnot.
Yeah. I thought about shooting a trailer too for the book. I've got an idea for one, but I have like no skill or resources in like shooting and editing a trailer. But I had an idea for one for the book.
Yeah, I'm on the
So
same page
it's
right now. I have a pixel cover that I haven't released yet. Really cool cover. It's like a cover for Allegory that's in pixel art. And I was actually thinking of recontacting that artist and making and asking him to make me a digital painting of that, like to make it like moving and like to make that into a trailer for Allegory. I
that
thought that would be kind.
works.
I thought that would be kind of cool. But still, like it feels like hands are like so just stretched apart in every single possible way you can imagine. For as much like the book idea that I told you about with the whole desert and the frozen bush, that's Iris of Mercy. That's the first chapter I actually sent you already. Yeah, you're the only other person that's read that. Now that I think about it, remember that first chapter that I
Yeah.
asked your opinion on? Yeah,
Yeah, that was good.
That's Iris of Mercy. And I haven't worked on that for as much as the moment I started like really finalizing Allegory, that's been untouched. and that hurts my soul every single day, because it's like, you wake up with the idea of like, all right, or like you go to sleep with the idea of like, all right, what have I done today? And you're like, all right, I did this and that, cool. But then it's like, all right, you got no writing done today. Oh my god. I
Yeah.
think that's like the most the eternal like double-edged sword, or what's it called, the sword of Democles. I can't remember the dude's name.
Damocles. Yeah.
Damocles sword. It's like the
Damocles. Yeah.
overhanging thing that at any point, at any moment,
Yeah.
you can just get hung with a sword that's gonna slice you in two, which is the realization of, oh yeah, I haven't written in XYZ months, and my actual professional title that I'm trying to go for is writer. So what am I doing?
Yeah. It's so, well, we've all got our day gig. I get 4 to 6 hours every Sunday morning to write. That's how much writing time I get. During the week, I'm doing my day job, and I start my 28th year in corrections tomorrow, actually. There's a daunting thought. But, I take care of the house. I run the errands and stuff, because my wife's a nurse. She works 60, 70-hour weeks, and she's exhausted. So I do all the household stuff and my full-time job. So I get, like I say, 4 to 6 hour period every Sunday to write. And, it's frustrating, but I have to make that time count and really do as much as I can. But I keep, I have this dream of, man, if I was retired and could write every day, how much would I have done by now? I'd have more products. I'd be making more money. So you got to do what you got to do.
I'm right there with you.
So
Truly.
it's always a struggle.
Oh my god. Well, you already have Israfel Rising out.
Yep.
Israel Falling just come out.
Yeah.
Six Legs of the Devil being made currently. Out soon.
Yeah. Working on that. Hopefully, I'm thinking, if I'm lucky, late summer, early fall, but definitely no later than the Christmas season.
Phenomenal.
And I'm working. I write songs. I At work on my lunch breaks, I usually just go to the cafeteria and work on song lyrics, because it's something you can do short term. You don't have to like immerse yourself in the world of a book. So I'll scribble down song, and once I work out a song, I'll come home and put it in a file in the computer. And I'm thinking, when I have like 80, 90, 100 songs, I may publish a song book, just because I don't read or write music. I can't play. I can't sing because I'm tone deaf. But I love music. And I thought, okay, lyrics, words are kind of my thing. So I'm hoping to maybe publish that and make it accessible to musicians and singers who can play and sing and need words for the music they play. And maybe that can be another revenue stream, and something else cool that can happen. So I'm hopefully this year going to publish that, as well as the 8 Legs of the Devil, and then start whatever Sully's going to do next. And then maybe next year, if and when there's a reader demand for it, or a reader market for it, write the next Israfel book, the third idea I have. That, like I said, the first 2 tie up the story. There's no loose ends, but there is room for another kind of story. And I don't want to spoil it. I can't even tell you the title, because that'll tell you what it's about. But if and when there's a market for it, I've got that somewhere on the back burner too. So, but for right now, it's all about 8 Legs of the Devil and getting these sold.
So that is the future of Steve R. Gans, but I'm telling you, folks, you need to catch up on the present. All right. SteveRGans.com, Amazon, Kindle, Goodreads. Do your due diligence. Pick up these books. I'm telling you, it is not going to be a disappointment. I mean, if you have any doubt, go back and listen to the first episode. I think Steve R. Gans is one of the OGs, and I think it's episode like 5 or 4. So go back and listen to it.
It's pretty early.
I'm telling you, it's a great episode to listen to, but we really go in depth on Israfel's Rising. I really am a huge fan of that book. And the ending, the twist in between, the Welsh obviously saying that stayed with me for so many months now. It is way, way, way worth your time. Steve, do you have any final thoughts, any last comments for the people?
Wow, just gratitude for everybody who's shown interest and picked up the book. Gratitude to you for letting me come back and having fun and talking about anything and everything. It's always a good time. And I'm waiting to read Allegory of the End, just like everybody else. So I need to stay tuned to your stuff as well. and keep reading. There's lots of stories. Everybody's got some. So keep reading and put those reviews out there.
Review, review, review. I actually haven't done my due diligence. The moment, well, I'm, I don't want to keep on, but I definitely am owed that, not am owed. I definitely owe that review without a doubt. It's just I've been so wrapped up, but I really need to get on my due diligence and make sure I do that, support my fellow community. Horrible, 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 I know, but I've just been so wrapped up, as you said, day job and everything else. But
you got a lot going on.
I know, but I really should be whipped at least 4 or 5 times at this point. But again, Steve R. Gans, I cannot thank you enough. I cannot urge the listeners to pick up your book enough. And really just touched because you're one of the first people I've talked to, one of the people that really made me feel like, hey, this actually might not be a bad idea if this is how it's going to be forever. So again, just truly thank you. That's going to be the end of the podcast. I'm going to talk to Steve a little bit more after this, but it's going to be for my ears only.
Hey, cool.
So thank you again. This is going to be the end of the podcast. Steve, thank you. Where can people find you again for the people listening on social media?
Facebook, Steve Gans, Instagram, Steve Gans, and stevergans.com.
And there you have it, folks. This is the end of the podcast. A.R.'s Tales, aka the A.R.T podcast. I am A.R. Metabod. That's Steve R. Gans. We will check on you next time. Peace out.